This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Hello, mic check. You guys hear me?
You were audible.
Oh, thank you, sir. Just waiting for everyone else to come. Patriot Sound should be here. I know he's on. He was in Patriot's in a XRP space, chatting with people, trying to spread the word.
They're pretty fun. I've joined a few of them. They're a good, light-hearted group, but you got to love them because they're integrated.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't see Chad anywhere either.
Can I make a suggestion? We all take a second and think who we wait or who should be initiated among our integrated partners.
Intern, shapeshift. You're cutting in and out quite a bit. Your connection is your connection or your microphone?
Correct.
Try it again.
I'll likely need to recycle.
Oh, that's better. I can hear you.
I was just suggesting for us to quote, post, and invite specific people intentionally.
Sure. Who do you have in mind?
I'd say any of the integrated coins and/or front ends.
Yeah, but for sure, all means. I can't. I have a hard time walking and chewing gum at the same time. So if some people listening want to do it, great. Yeah.
And if you could enable comments, I'm not sure if you could enable after you launch, but there's no comments available.
What do you mean no comments available?
Typically in Spaces, you can leave a comment at the bottom. Currently, my only option currently is to send you a fist or a clap.
Okay, let me see. Give me a second.
Never rush, no pressure.
It's the comment is to the bottom right, right? Like to the right of the post.
Hey guys, I don't think comments can't be toggled on and off. I just think it's the X's are messed up. Like when I can't, like as a host, I often see the comment thing and I can't use it. So I don't think you can really turn comments off. I just think sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's my understanding because it's really inconsistent. So yeah,
my uneducated guess is it needs to be initiated prior to launch. That may be the case. I'm only a guess.
no, there is no thing for comments when you go to make a space, as far as I know. So I could be
No,
wrong.
there isn't. It's only record. That's the only thing you have to do before when you create the space is select record. But yeah, I know you're saying shapeshift. I can't press on the comment. The comment button isn't working for me either. But Chad B he messaged me saying he's gonna be 5 minutes late. Why don't we just kind of get started and Patriot, we'll just kind of do what we've been doing and introduce ourselves, because I'm sure we're gonna have lots of OG THORChads on this one, but we also want new people as well, right? So for those of you who don't know, my name is Kenton. I have a fund that invests in Rune and runs nodes on THORChain. And so I'm a node operator on THORChain, and been doing these spaces with Patriot now for, I don't know, going on a few months, eh?
Yeah, that's correct, man. And we're going to keep doing them because they're great. It's a great way to outreach. And yeah, guys, my name's Patriot Sounds. My real name's Denny. I just actually went to an XRP space and tried to get them in here just so they can learn more about us. Guys, I got to say, I've been spending a lot of time with XRPers, and they are actually a really wonderful community. And they have been so excited that we integrated XRP. So if you're an XRPer and you're here and you're listening to this record, if you're listening to this recording, thanks. I appreciate it. And please reach out if you want to do any collab or anything like that, because I love your guys' community, and I think you're all awesome. Oh, we got Chad B on stage now. Awesome. Hey, Chad, how's it going?
Hey guys, how are you?
Yeah, good to you. And Chad, if you don't mind introducing yourself, because I know we're gonna have lots of older THORChads on the space, but we also have new ones too who might actually be new to you. So if you can do a quick intro of yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chad. I'm one of the co-founders of THORChain. I started it with JP and another individual in 2019, born out of a Cosmos hackathon where JP and I had met and started whacking on this thing. So it's been a long years, and for most of that time, I've been kind of managing most of like the technical stuff. I think, to my knowledge, I think most of the code is still mine today. I haven't checked in a while, but I think that's probably still true. I can also be a main contributor for a very long time.
Weren't there like 4 to 6 people like on top of you and JP? Weren't there like 4 other people that helped write code and contribute?
In the beginning, no, it was just me and Heimdall for the first, I don't know, maybe like a year or 2 years for like they're doing like the core dev stuff. We had a couple other engineers that working on other things that those people didn't work out so well. They didn't really produce much. We had another person that was doing the threshold signature stuff. At the time, it was GG18. That person was a cryptographer and an expert in threshold signatures, so it was a good addition. I don't think we actually hired like a new dev until much later that I can recall. I think Nine Realms was one of the earlier ones, I would probably say.
Oh wow.
What wasn't so THORChain, wasn't it like envisioned or created during a hackathon in Germany? Was it 2019 or 2020? How did you have that aha moment about like THORChain? Like what do you remember that at all? Like when it just kind of clicked, like, holy shit, we can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so JP had started with the notion about a year earlier than when I had got involved. He had tried to do it on his own. He had hired a dev like firm out of Vietnam or someplace like or Bulgaria, whatever hell it was. And it didn't work out for a host of reasons, but one of the reasons was that official signatures weren't real at that time, and so it was a question about like how do you secure all this stuff, and the cryptography wasn't there in 2018, and in 2019 you had the Cosmos kind of framework was kind of launched. We were one of the earlier adopters of the Cosmos framework, um, um, and we had GG18 came out as well. So all the technical pieces came together in 2019. And we just needed more dedicated engineering people that could deeply understand the space and build out what this vision was. But it was funny because like earlier on, I remember JP and I would like have these discussions. We were both living in Melbourne together for a few months, and we were like whiteboarding every day and coding and whatever. And I remember like he would ask me if this is even going to work. And I always knew it was going to work. Like, there was no question whether or not it was going to work or not. It was just a question of like, how long would it take to actually get to the place where you could actually build it. And because like this is really one of the most complicated projects in the industry. I still kind of stand by that. And it's one of the most difficult projects in the industry from a technology perspective. And so, but I always knew it was going to work. It was just a question of like how long would it take to get there. And for me, it took. I mean, I was working 9 a.m. to midnight every day for about a year and a half, 7 days a week, just fully like plugged in for a long time to get this thing to actually function and work. And I thankfully had Heimdall with me at that time too. Heimdall was actually part time for most of that time though, because he had another job somewhere else. And but he was obviously an important component of that as well, without a doubt.
Wow, right on. Well then, but after all that work, you took a break. You stepped away for about a year, right? And now
Yeah.
you're back in the saddle. Have you caught up? You mentioned how complicated THORChain is. I mean, I imagine a lot changed in that year. Were you able to kind of uh, see what's changed, kind of pick up where you left off? Are you back running now full speed? You know, where are you in that process?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm back to like 100% speed because it is a complicated code base, and you have to remind yourself where all the code is and what all the code does, which is there's a lot of code in this thing. And I've caught up on a lot of things we've done over the past year. I stepped back for personal reasons, and I'm back to help the community build and move forward and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've my brain is kind of well greased enough to get my hands dirty in the code, and I've been trying to work on limit swaps and rapid swaps since I got back. And so it's an ongoing project of mine. I'm trying to get that thing launched in the next maybe a couple months.
Well, what are those again? Can you explain them to us?
Sure. So one of them is like what I'm calling like limit swaps. So when you do a trade today, it's effectively a market swap, right? You're just saying, here's a bunch of Bitcoin, give me as much Ether as you can with a limit of, don't give me less than 5 Ether or whatever hell the number is. And if it can't do that, then it just does a refund, right? Like we can't give you the 5 Ether that you wanted, so we're gonna give you back your Bitcoin. It's a limit swaps is like a small tweak on that where you can just say, well, just wait until you can give me 5 Ether or whatever. And so it just holds on to your order, waiting for the pool to adjust itself into a ratio between Bitcoin and Ether, so to speak, to get you what you want. So that's the first component. So you can just sit there and wait for have an open order to sell your Bitcoin for Ether or whatever when the price hits a certain price that you're looking for. That's the first component, and then the second component is what we've been calling rapid swaps. Although, to be honest, it's not really a great name. But the idea behind that is that because you have limit orders, limit swaps, and arbitrage bots can just put a ratio between Bitcoin and Ether or whatever. Whenever somebody's swapping in the other direction, they can just swap multiple times against that ARB, right? So you can just like doing a streaming swap, but doing it all in a single block versus doing it over 10 blocks or 100 blocks. So it just makes a streaming swap a lot faster and maybe same block execution.
So back to the limit swaps. I mean, that's basically just doing partial fills instead of an all or none order. You're
Yeah,
enabling partials.
it'll,
Or
it'll do a partial fill at the ratio that you're requesting until it can do the whole thing.
so let's say I'm trying to sell 1 Bitcoin for, forgive my math, guys, 30 ETH,
Yep.
but I only get filled on 16 ETH. Am I allowed? Can
Yep.
I then be like, well, you know what? I'm going to cancel my order and just take that 16 ETH and whatever Bitcoin I have left over, and just pull it back to my wallet? Or yeah, how does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. So there's a modification ability where you can modify one of these limit swaps. And if you set the trade target to 0, then it's effectively telling it that you want to cancel. So you can either cancel midway and it'll give you, half your Bitcoin back and maybe 15 of the ETH or whatever it is that happened. Or you can just sit there and wait for it to execute the rest of it. It's up to you.
Cool. So then so basically like a regular, I mean, that's how trading works on like the stocks on a stock brokerage account. So you're
Yeah.
basically
I mean,
copying that.
It's similar to like an order book, but an order book is just like you have buyers and sellers, and you're matching buyers and sellers together. Here, there's no order book like matching people. It's more of just matching to the pool itself. And so, because everybody's like swaps are being cut up into small pieces with a streaming swap, it's just like pushing the pool up and down, up and down, up and down, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between two limit swaps going in opposite directions.
So
And theoretically, you should be able to execute all of that in a single block.
so these limit swaps, they're not going to be utilizing order books on trade assets.
I mean, you can use trade assets with a limit swap if you want to. Sure, I think that's one of the best use cases for this kind of like new feature to me is for ARBs. So it allows ARBs to ARB much more efficiently, right? And allows them to be able to ARB the pool immediately in the same block rather than doing more swaps in later blocks, which takes more time, which means the amount of time it takes for them to um, readjust their portfolio on the other side through another exchange or whatever would be faster, and which means the ARB flow, like the rate of flow of ARB funds, theoretically should increase, which should give us just better price execution.
Well, if I'm a regular user, I want to go place a limit swap. I have to
Yep.
deposit, send in my Bitcoin to THORChain, right? Where is
Yep.
that how is that being held? Is that being held as a trade asset, a secured asset? Is it going into the pool? How is THORChain accounting for that my one Bitcoin?
Yeah. Well, in that scenario, if you did like a limit swap from Bitcoin directly, then it wouldn't be a trade asset in that case. It would just operate as a Bitcoin that's sitting outside of the pool, and then it's just trading and trading and trading, kind of sucking up each streaming swap, sub swap. It takes a little piece of it, swaps it, and then swaps a little bit more and swaps a little bit more, and then on the end side, you have hopefully all the Bitcoin's gone, and now you have a bunch of Ether, and the Ether gets sent out to you.
So is this like a new, I mean, we've got pooled assets, trade assets, secured assets. Is this going to be like a new asset on THORChain? Or
No,
how?
it's not really a new asset. It's a regular Bitcoin. It's just not sitting inside the pool. It's sitting outside of the pool, and it's slowly being put in the pool as a streaming swap. So it's not really a new asset per se. It's just like you have a streaming swap, associated going on, which is tracked in the KV store, and it knows how much Bitcoin you put in, and how much Ether it's swapped to, and how much Bitcoin it's kind of spent to get that Ether, and how much, and kind of tracks all that information within that streaming swap kind of details, and then at the end of it, it just kind of settles, whichever directions it got to settle.
So will these limit swap orders, they'll contribute to the TVL of the network then? Because
Uh,
basically THORChain securing that order while it's waiting to be filled.
so it wouldn't. I mean, technically speaking, yes, but like if you look at the TVL metrics. I don't know how the TVL metrics actually work because it's not Bitcoin in the pool. If you look at the TVLs on like how deep the pools are, then this wouldn't be
Yeah.
counted in that kind of calculation. If you look at like the wallets and how much Bitcoin's in the wallets, you're right, then it would be counted as part of TVL. It's just a matter of like how do you want what constitutes TVL?
Yeah.
Is it what's in the pools or what's stored as assets? Because then it's like our trade assets, are those a part of TVL? Yes, no. I mean, it just depends on how you want to define the word.
No, well, in my mind it does because it's what the nodes are securing, right? Where these are the
Sure.
exogenous assets that the network is securing.
Yeah,
Um,
but there's an assumption with that, like that like TVL is equal to like how much liquidity is
yeah, yeah,
on the, which is not necessarily the case here, because you can have a trade asset that doesn't not doing anything. It's just
yeah.
sitting in a wallet, not really doing jack shit. And so is it contributing to the liquidity of the network in that moment? Technically, no, it's not. It's just kind of sitting in a wallet. So it's like TVL is kind of like kind of a funny term, because you can look at it as I'm like, how much locked value is there in the network? That's one way to look at it. Or how much assets does it have that contribute to its liquidity or its ability to execute its function? That's another definition of the word.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, cool, man. So then, okay, so that's limit swaps. Tell me more. So how I don't understand how rapid swaps is going to work. How can you have a streaming swap that normally takes say 24 hours all go through in one block? I don't. How to help me with that, please?
So, and so in a sense, so imagine you have two traders, right? One's selling some Bitcoin to Ether, and the other one's selling some Ether into Bitcoin. Now, the size doesn't really matter because the streaming swap size is the same. So even if my value going from Bitcoin to Ether, let's just call it $1 million, and then Kenton here, he's trading $2 million from Ether to Bitcoin. We can basically execute half of that, of half of my trade and all of your trade in a single block with the streaming swap, because what will happen is your swap will go through, like one of your little small sub swaps, and then one of my sub swaps will go through as well, and then yours will go through, and then mine will go through, and then yours will go through, and then mine will go through, and we're just like pushing the same value back and forth through the pool, back and forth, until my $1 million in Bitcoin that I have has already been spent, and you've got $1 million worth of Ether still kind of waiting to swap. So, from my perspective, my streaming swap of $1 million happened in a single block with the same execution as if it took 100 blocks or whatever it is, 24 hours or whatever. And for you,
Got it.
half of yours is already taken care of. This is waiting for either the price to move in your direction, or somebody comes, swapping from another person comes in with a Bitcoin to ETH trade, and they're kind of starting to eat into you. You're eating into each other or trading with each other, using the pool as the medium between the two.
Well, with a rapid swap, we're cutting out the pool as a middleman? Like everyone has to
No,
go
no,
through the pool. Oh, sorry.
everybody goes to the pool. Like there's no outside pool trades happening within this. That if it was outside the pool, that would be an order book, which is what App Layer is working on.
Okay.
And that has value too. Like that has a good use case for that. But for me, I just want to make sure that the base foundation of THORChain is as efficient and as flexible and powerful as we can make it, by adding limit swaps. And we could do something like, like stop loss, right, is a theoretical thing we could support. Whether we do or not, I don't know. That's another conversation. But I'm always just trying to think about how can we make the base layer more useful, and more valuable. And I think if we add a more advanced trading features like limit swaps, for example, that's going to engage with a new class of trader. Like we don't really have traders on THORChain per se. We have swappers, which is people who just have a wallet on Trust Wallet, and they have some Bitcoin and they want some Ether, they make a trade. And it's not people who are actually traders who actually do charting and blah 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 and day trade and make kind of analysis of future movements and whatnot. And by adding like more advanced trading functionality, we can kind of invite those types of people, those traders who do much more volume than like kind of hobbyist swappers might. And so we can actually really like give more depth and attract a much larger audience, and therefore a lot more liquidity and hopefully a lot more trade volume. That's the intent.
Absolutely. Yeah, rapid swaps sounds actually really cool. I mean, that's basically what clearinghouses do in the stock brokerage industry. They just tally up all their trades at the end of the day, and they net out each other. What is the net between them all, and that's how they move between them, and
Yeah.
just makes it way more efficient.
Yeah.
So are these so? You took a year off, you come back, and you're back at work. Is limit swaps and rapid swaps, has this been cooking in your brain for the last year or two type thing? And this is like the first thing you wanted to get
Oh
done
yeah.
and get shipped?
Oh yeah. I actually had the code for limit swaps implemented in 2021 or 2022, I think, probably 2022. It actually was sitting in the code base. It's just been like partially implemented, mostly implemented. Actually, I did that before even streaming swaps existed in the code base. So it's been around for a long time. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I just had a hard time getting it merged in effect, which is like really sad because it's like a really powerful feature that could increase our volumes quite significantly. And I would even like go as far to like, here's my prediction. You guys can, my hot take prediction. You guys can hold me to later, but that eventually limit swaps will exceed market swaps, the swaps we've been doing this whole time. And limit swaps will be, in terms of volume, will be higher um, than regular swaps are. I don't know how fast it'll be. Maybe in the first 3 months, maybe 6, but like to me, that's an inevitable thing to happen just because it's a much more efficient tool for arbs.
I agree with you, man. Absolutely. And I'm actually really looking forward to this because streaming swaps is, in my view, that was a real big game changer in THORChain over the last few
Oh, it's
years. It
huge.
made a big difference. Yeah.
That's probably the most important feature we added in the protocol, I would say. It had the most significant effect to getting much more volumes. 'Cause I remember like I was when streaming swaps kind of the idea came to me and I was discussing it with JP and all these and I remember like some people on the team were thinking like, well, we don't need streaming swaps because nobody's going to want to trade more than $10,000 on THORChain. It's never going to happen. And I was like, I don't know about that because there are big whales out there who want to trade much larger volumes, and we've seen people do like I remember we saw a $6 million trade. I think it was BDC to WBDC, but the WBDC pool was only $4 million deep. And we had a $6 million trade, which is such a like it's an unheard of notion that you would not see on any other AMM that I at least that I know of. That's just completely impractical. But streaming swaps made that possible.
And
You
want to
know,
add to your anecdote, I don't know, it barely moved the price in WBTC. Like the price of the pool was stable that whole time. You'd think it
yeah,
would throw the price out of whack, but it didn't.
yeah, because of that slow kind of streaming swap thing, it made it so arbs can arb effectively. And the slip was like I think it was like 100 basis points or 175 basis points, which is like not that bad considering you're swapping more than 50% of the pool itself. Like that's pretty darn good.
Yeah. Well, so on limit swaps, you mentioned the code's been there for a while. You've had actually a bit of a hard time with merge requests. Was it like kind of some questions around the code, like around security, or just not enough developer time to kind of just get it done? What was the holdup?
Um, I mean, the holdup was, uh, I mean, Nine Realms in general had a very different mentality than JP and I. We're kind of at odds, but at odds in a positive way in a sense. Like JP and I are both kind of more on the vision side. We're more kind of shippers. We like to get things done, get things out the door, move fast. And Nine Realms has always been more of like let's create more stability. Let's create more solid foundations and prepare from like instead of JP and I are like more like 0 to 1 kind of guys in some sense, and Nine Realms is more like a 1 to 10 kind of guys in some sense. And so like there's like a natural disagreement about things, and so almost every feature that myself and JP, with the exception maybe 1 or 2, but almost every feature was opposed by Nine Realms, um, including streaming swaps. Not all, but not everybody at Nine Realms, but some were against it, and it took a little convincing to get it out the door and all that kind of stuff. But um, I think it was as a time of resource time as well. Like it was hard to get Nine Realms engaged in some of the code changes. They were focused on some things within their own space, with their own corporation of running nodes for people and other things like that. But I think we're in a much better place today. We can move more solidly, more fluidly today than we could have in 2022, which I'm actually quite happy about. It's a positive result of all this dramas that we actually can move much more smoothly, which is great. I'm actually appreciative of that in a sense. But yeah, it's something I wanted to do a long time ago and been pushing for. And now that I'm back, I'm looking at the list of things that I want to see done, and I got like about 9 different things that I want to see done over the next 6 months, maybe 12. But to me, rapid swaps is arguably the most important in terms of its economic upside to the protocol.
For sure, it sounds like it to me too. Regarding Nine Realms, I mean, there's been a bit of turnover there. There's lots of new names now we see in Discord.
Yep.
Has the culture at Nine Realms maybe changed a bit, where they're a bit more agreeable, or is it still there's still a bit of healthy tension there?
That's a good question. There has been a good amount of churn within the Nine Realms world, and we have Simon's new and Randy's new, and another person just joined as well. Which I'm not sure if I should even say that person's name or not. Um, I think because we're starting from a fresh place, it's a lot easier to move much more smoothly, and it seems like we're in much agreement with each other. I know JP and I were commenting towards each other. We had a meeting, I don't know how, maybe a month ago, whatever it was. We were just chatting, and we were just talking. One of the things we were saying was that like we were very happy with the direction of where Nine Realms is going, and we were really happy with what we have seen thus far from Simon and Randy so far have been really positive. Positive mentalities and knowing how to move forward. So I think we're both pretty impressed with them so far, which is I'm really excited about that. It's something we've always been pushing hard for, is to get more people involved that does so we're less reliant on JP and myself. But yeah, we're definitely feeling pretty good.
And I have
I
to.
can actually add a little.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Kenton. I actually can add a little bit there because I did hang out with Orion in Las Vegas, and Chad, dude, he is so excited that you're back, man. And he told me anecdotally, I think it's fine if I can say this, that Nine Realms is really happy you're back too, because when you left, that year for personal reasons, I remember someone sharing a metric on Discord of the level of code that was being shipped, and it looked like a rug pull, like on a price chart. It just went all the way down, man. So, dude, no, Nine Realms is so happy that you're back. I can definitely say that 100% with a straight face.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to come back in a way as well. I kind of enjoyed my little time off to relax and breathe after um, years of stress. But no, I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to be shipping again. Shipping code, and I think that there's like we're getting towards like we're heading towards like an end game kind of mentality. At least myself and JP are thinking this way, that we want to head towards ossification, and that we want the base layer to become kind of rock solid foundation. And so there's only a handful of features that we're looking to ship, make the major features to ship over the next 6 to 12 months. But after that is done, I think our mentality is mostly about improving the quality of the code, adding more chains, making the code faster, more efficient, more easily testable, and just kind of maintenance stuff, and let the app layer do what the app layer is going to do, which is they're going to do all this kind of interesting, DeFi protocols on top of THORChain's infrastructure.
I hope everyone's encouraged hearing that because, I know we've had our trials and tribulation, guys, but I think if everyone's just listening to this right now, understand that what THORChain is and what we built, it was a 0 to 1. It was unique. We were the pioneers. We're the one that pushed this thing to the max. And so whatever mistake or blunder we had, just understand that the advancements we've made relative to that were actually mind blowing. People always remember, I think, the negative stuff, but the positive stuff that we have accomplished as a community, particularly under your leadership, Chad, has been absolutely extraordinary. So you guys, I hope you're all feeling bullish. I mean, I really feel like what Chad's feeling. Like, I feel like we've finally figured it out. I mean, you have to play, you have to experiment, you have to try new things. I mean, when you have a 0 to 1, what can you build? And can you redesign economics in a way that really is just so much better than TradFi or whatever you want to say? And that's what it is. So, guys, bon jour, that's what I'm going to say. Kenton, you were going to say something. I'll give it back to you, buddy.
I was just going to commend Chad and JP because, really smart people, entrepreneurs, successful people. They're, you get that way because you're strong-minded, right? And you have strong will. And, if anyone hears that, them bringing in Nine Realms, there's some tension, disagreement. If they hear that and they think that's bad, I actually think it's really good and really, it's pretty amazing that JP and Chad would hire a team that disagrees with them. Like, I think that shows a lot of wisdom and humility, that they know that, okay, they can't do it all by themselves. They got to get in help. And it's good to have someone, a counterweight, right, to kind of question and whatnot. And I think it's very healthy. I think it's really good for the long term. And the fact that maybe there was some people in Nine Realms who have left, but overall they're still here, right? Everyone's still working together. It's just, that's life. That's how things go, right? People come and go, but the overall mission remains the same. And we're still moving in that direction, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, it's to add on to what you're saying and to what Patrick was saying earlier. Like this whole idea of cross-chain liquidity, for the most part, didn't really exist until THORChain. Like THORChain was the first in some ways, like gave birth to cross-chain liquidity, like this subcategory of our industry, which is pretty amazing. And to this day, we're still by far the leader in this particular space. There's no one that's close to us. I think Chainflip's probably the closest, and they're like 8 times less volume or something like this at the current moment. So we're still one of the most profitable blockchains in the industry. We produce a huge amount of fees from people utilizing the protocol, which that should be like, that should be on everybody's kind of radar. That's like, hey, where's your real value? There's your real value. When you're actually getting real yield produced from people actually wanting to use your product rather than just building Ponzi scheme factories, and other and other ecosystems. That's something that you can hang your hat on and feel good and feel proud about.
Absolutely. That's why for me, having no block rewards is such a big deal. Like, isn't correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't THORChain the first crypto to get rid of its block rewards and to survive solely on 100% of its own revenue, like real world use? Like, I feel like this is
Um,
unheard of in crypto.
I think the closest thing is Ethereum, but they don't. So sometimes you don't have block emissions in Ethereum, and sometimes you do. It depends upon market values. So I guess to my knowledge, that we would be the first ones to do it holistically. Um, so I think we are the first ones to do that, and we can do that because we have a fucking product that
Yeah.
actually provides value to people, not just nonsense protocols that just selling meme tokens or I don't know, they're just gambling vehicles, you know?
Well, exactly. Like the THORChain is solving a genuine, real problem in the marketplace, whereas all these other cryptos are really solutions in the search of a problem. Like,
Yeah.
they're just taking advantage of the momentum of the industry.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's for me. This is what kept me and what keeps me going. Through especially this last year, is that it's so obvious that this is solving a real problem, and it's succeeding at it. And it's only getting better at doing that.
Yeah. 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 Yep. I totally agree. Totally agree. We're
So
shipping though.
yeah, I wanted to ask you. Sorry, guys. Want to ask Chad, one more question about changes. So, what about having an order book on trade assets? Um, we've talked.
Yeah.
I've talked about it a bit offline. Is that something um, you're still interested in? Do you think should be done? Should be shipped? Is it not a priority? Yeah. What are your thoughts there?
An order book for trade assets.
Yeah, for the RBots to use.
Um, I mean, I would argue that the limit swaps is effectively is that you
Okay.
can use it for trade assets. You can use limit swaps for trade assets as well as just L1 assets as well. So I would argue that that's what limit swaps will effectively do.
Okay.
I don't think you need like order books because if you're actually doing genuine order books, you're skipping the pool. You're no longer producing the revenue in a sense, right? Because you're not taking out fees into the pool. So you have to have some other mechanism of collecting fees, which is fine. But I don't think there's an intention to do like an order book for trade assets. I think the order book that's going to exist in the app layer is probably going to be that to some degree. While it would probably use secured assets instead of trade assets, but nonetheless, it'll still function and do the thing it's designed to do.
Okay, got it. Our bots will be able to use limit swaps just like retail traders. They'll both use it the same.
Yes. Yeah, I think
Got it.
so. That's my hope at least.
Yeah. Well, because the only other thing I was just thinking about is because trade assets I think have slightly lower swap fees than trading in the pool, and the idea is there to try and stimulate volume. So I was just kind of wondering how that might shake itself out if we have ARBs and retail trading together. Um, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
if I have a point there or not. I'm just rambling.
it should increase the volume in theory. And the reason why is because your trading efficiency goes up, your efficiency of capital goes up. So that means you should be able to maintain better pricing, more competitive pricing as a natural result of that. So on paper, it should increase the volume. How much? It's hard to tell, with these things. It's hard to guess. But I have to. I'd be surprised if it wasn't significant.
And so how would wallets that already have THORChain integrated, I assume they'd have to do some kind of update to their wallet in order to display and handle a limit swap on THORChain? Or how would
Yeah.
that work?
Well, the nice thing is that the memo is the same between a limit swap and like a market swap or a regular swap. The only change is like a single character, which is kind of funny. So, so other than that, it's basically identically the same. Now, the difference though is that once you have a limit swap, you have to be able to track, how much of my trade is executed, right? Like, 20% or 30%, and how much ether have I gotten for my half a Bitcoin that it's traded thus far, blah blah blah. And that's easy to pull that information via the API, by the streaming swap API endpoint can just pull that information and show you how many trades there have been, how many failures there's, attempts to trade, but it failed to swap for one reason or another because it couldn't get the right fee or whatever. And it gives you all that kind of information about like how far along you are. And then you have to create another kind of new functionality in those wallets to do modifications and cancellations. So modify my limit order to increase the amount of ether I'm going to get the other side, or decrease it, or just cancel the entire thing and just refund me whatever's remaining of the Bitcoin and whatever ether I've already gotten. Just give me both.
Cool. I've been asking questions for a while, talking for a while. Patriot, do you want to jump in for a bit? Is there anything you want to
Well,
go
you're
over
doing
with
a
Chad?
great job, man. Well, you're doing a great job. Actually, because Chad, before the space started, I went on to another XRP space. I've been really trying to get involved with them, and I've been telling them what THORChain is and what we built. They're so excited. In fact, guys, I have an episode I'm doing. It's called Dip a Toe Show, specifically geared towards XRPers, and they invited me, and I'm hoping you can go too, Kenton. That'd be great. And then I'm going to pitch them, Rajira and stuff. I mean, I'm really trying to get everyone here. So we do have some people in the audience that I recognize that are not part of our community. Maybe Chad, if it'd be okay. I know we've been talking about THORChain for a while, but for the uninitiated, it sounds good, but they don't. Maybe we can just succinctly what does THORChain do precisely, and why is it a big deal? Maybe we'll just reset the space a little bit and just go from there.
Sure. Do you want me to answer that? Or do you want to try it yourself?
Oh, go ahead, brother. You're the man.
Oh yeah, so THORChain is a cryptocurrency project where it's solving the problem of how to trade liquidity across blockchains. That's been a holy grail for a long time. I know I see Shapeshift intern is on the panel here. I saw Michael in the audience earlier, who was CISO of Shapeshift. But that problem of trying to trade across blockchain has been an open kind of holy grail problem for a long time. And Shapeshift was when it started, I think it was in 2013. It was attempting to solve this problem. Unfortunately, the government didn't like that so much, and so they kind of crawled up the ass of Eric Voorhees and the rest of the team and caused all sorts of mayhem and mischief. But it was an open problem, and a lot of people thought about like atomic swaps back in the day. Like atomic swaps were going to be the solution to this problem, but and everybody had tried it, and nobody could get it to actually work with any kind of liquidity, and it was pretty much impractical to use. But THORChain had a different idea of implementing this, and we did it in a way of just having a separate blockchain, which we call THORChain, of course, that has approximately 100 validators, 110 now, or whatever the hell the number is. And each of these people run a full daemon for Bitcoin, a full Bitcoin Core, a full Doge, a full Ethereum, a full Binance Smart Chain, whatever. And this observes transactions going in and out of the wallets that it collectively controls using multi-party cryptography. So it's basically the simple way to describe it is it's just a way of swapping across blockchains, similar to what Uniswap does, but we just do it internationally, and Uniswap does it more like within per state within a country, and so we're kind of more like the airplanes, and Uniswap's more like the buses or trains.
Perfect. Yeah. And so guys, for those listening now live or the recording of this, this is a huge 0 to 1 going from layer 1 to layer 1, because beforehand we all, a lot of cross-chain swaps, air quotes, were done with wrapped assets that exist. Like if you have WBTC on Ethereum, right, which is not the real thing, that is basically controlled by a third party, which is inherently insecure. I know you've said that many times, Chad. I remember that line saying
Yeah,
that
yeah.
It is inherently insecure. It is not the way to go. And so we've made the right call here by going just to the layer one itself, real layer one to layer one. No middleman, no KYC, permissionless, and as decentralized as we possibly can make it. And so this is a huge, huge power up for the community. We were the first ones to accomplish this. Now we have many other protocols like my protocol, our lovely sister chain. But this is huge, guys. And now, this is a very complicated, like Chad was talking earlier in the space. THORChain is what, like hundreds of thousands of lines of code. What's so easy to describe simply is going from layer to one. That's an easy sentence, but to actually make that happen consistently, that works, that's verifiable, that doesn't rug anybody, doesn't make any mistakes, is an enormously complex issue. You guys heard what Chad said. He was going from 7 in the morning to midnight for 1.5 years straight, just like a lunatic, coding and coding and coding. So this vision was brought by the sweat, blood, and tears of many wonderful individuals. And many people, I remember you saying this, Chad, you had asked somebody like, well, why don't you try and swap to native Bitcoin? And I forget, but you something to the fact like, well, that would be really hard. Right?
Yeah,
So, right. I think you know what I'm
I
talking
remember
about.
that.
Yes, and it's like no, like this is what needs to happen. So this community. I'm not a developer, guys. I'm merely standing on the shoulder of giants. Be first and foremost, but really this took a lot of work to do, and it's here and it's really working great. And as you heard, and if you haven't heard, you need to listen to the recording of the space. We're making it optimized and better than ever. And I think, as Kenton was talking about, the growth phase of THORChain is really just beginning. And what I said earlier, guys, bond your ruin. I'm going to get into it. We have Slam Bammer up here. Slam Bammer is a node operator, okay? And he needs bond providers. Okay, I don't know what the APY is right now, Kenton. Maybe you can tell me. I should have checked. I forgot. I'll go ahead,
I think
Slam
it's
Bammer.
10% last time I looked.
Yeah,
10%.
it's roughly about 10%. It usually spikes just after a churn, but settles usually between 8 and 12.
Yep. You know what
Perfect,
the irony though, Patriot, is that like you were talking about how the code is like hundreds of thousands of lines, which is true. It's probably 200 or 300,000 or something like this. I don't know the exact number, but the irony there is that the actual swap logic of the code is probably closer to like 2,000. And so it's a very small percentage of the code is actually the business logic of like doing a swap or a trade. All that code is mostly about nodes and bonds and vaults and gas and threshold signatures and like it's so funny that like what we do here is swaps, but that's like not even like one. It's probably not even 1% of the code or close to 1% of the code, which is kind of like comedically funny.
Yeah, that is crazy. And one thing that I'm so happy is I remember when I started modding back in 2021 for the THORChain community, and I'd have a direct line to devs, all the edge cases we'd run into, all the bugs, I'd be forwarding information for people like, hey, this happened. I don't know what the heck's going on. Like, I don't have those days anymore.
Yep.
It's running like butter right now. Now, of course, knock on wood, we're going to be adding rapid swaps and all these different things. And, always keep your eye out. But just the main core part of THORChain, it's running so good. And that to me has been the most bullish indicator is that I actually don't have to talk to the devs anymore. I don't have that problem, which is just a testament to not only the devs, but the community figuring out bugs. I mean, we had some real serious bugs that just someone randomly on Telegram was like, hey, what the heck is going on? I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. So, it really took all of us to do this. So shout out to everyone
Sure.
involved. We have a couple new speakers here. Oh, go ahead, Kenton. I'll let you go.
I was gonna say the same thing. We got some speakers. Give them some time.
Yeah.
Rhino was the first one to request. We'll let him go first.
Well, good morning or afternoon, wherever you guys are. Look, this is all great. I kind of have a question that will address a certain elephant in the room. My question is this: what would Chad say to like all the LPs who got mega, screwed over by the whole THORFi thing? I know this is kind of in the past, but I think we should learn from the past, right? And like a lot of people have hard time like trusting the whole vision of like like, oh, we're gonna do this and buying pressure this and minting that. But what happened was that we got pretty hurt on that. Uh, what's something to give us some sort of like peace of mind? Like, okay, we're gonna be more careful. Like when you guys ask questions and it all doesn't add up quite for us, we'll slow down and explain it rather than just like bulldoze over and do what we want to do, because we have a lot at stake, right? And we want to make sure that our investments are somewhat protected, which has been a rocky thing in the past, right? So my question is, why should we feel bullish on this kind of like, okay, Chad's back, let's go back to basics? I mean, we just had a massive cleanup happening while Chad was away. um like what kind of words of um confidence would you give us on that?
Um,
Uh,
Chad, do you
yeah.
mind if I maybe just jump in a little bit first here? So, look, I completely understand your feelings. So personally, I've been a participant with THORChain since 2021, mainly just in liquidity providing. I did have some in savers as well. So in terms of being affected by THORFi, I completely understand. I've had liquidity positions open since 2021, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. Um, I I've been a long time believer in the overall vision of THORChain, and so I've stuck it out since then. I too have had positions that were sort of heavily in the red, and when THORFi when the unwind was taking place, it was an incredibly tense time, and I was one of the people that were really fighting hard to make sure that liquidity providers were given at least some path forward. I also decided that if I was going to, I was either going to pull out and cut my losses with THORChain, or I was going to double down. And if so, I needed to get more involved, and that's why I became a node operator at the start of this year. And so, I guess what I would say to you is this: um, I don't know of any other unwind that went as smoothly as it did. Now, what THORChain recovered from was I mean, it's a miracle that it didn't implode the protocol, and I think the fact that we did, and we've come out as strongly as we can, as strongly as we did, is truly amazing. I
But you do understand why I'm kind of hesitant to put the same driver back in the front seat that got us in that ditch, right?
Yes,
You talking
absolutely.
about you talking about me?
All right. Well, I don't know if he's talking. I think. Well, I think this is actually good that you interrupted. Didn't interrupt it. Interjected because you were affected. Let me talk specifically to you because I'm someone who has got absolutely annihilated because I was primarily a liquidity provider. Okay. The beginning. So the part. Let's go back to 2021 and ChaosNet. I'm watching Chad Barraford's videos online. It's before ChaosNet. I haven't met Chad Barraford. I'm starting to get understanding in the community. And I'm realizing deep down the importance of THORChain and what it represents and how crucial it is for a world to be free, economically liberated, right? As an LP, I have suffered tremendously, tremendously. If anyone knows me, knows that I was primarily an LP because I firmly believe that in order for THORChain to be successful, LPing, or at least has to work in some degree, right? So yes, I have been hurt, I think, far worse than any saver, any lending user. But like Slambammer, what THORChain represents is so important. And I hope you remember what I said before, if you were here, that you have to understand that the 0 to 1 that we built cannot be done without mistakes. It can't be done without adventurism of some kind, without forging the path forward. Because this is a very hard problem. How do you, with blockchain technology, design a system that not only is better than TradFi, but actually can't be corrupted and co-opted by a third party like a nation state? And that's what THORChain is. And so in the beginning, it's all theory. This has never existed before. We have to learn how to do everything. And so we had some blowout successes like streaming swaps, and maybe we definitely had some blunders as well. But this is the point I would say to you is that pain that we suffered before was our necessary initiation to be at where we're at right now. And to Slam Bammer's point, what we accomplished was absolutely incredible. And I hope anyone listening to this has no doubt about the strength and resiliency of this fucking community and how serious we are about our goal. Because words are bullshit. Walking is what matters. And we put up we put up. We mean what we say. We say what we mean, and we mean what we say. And so yeah, I've really hurt right now, but not for a second, my friend, that I am swayed from the path. And I am just like Slam Bammer, double down. But I totally understand what you are. And I think if there's anything to come out of this that would make you bullish, is that now for the first time in my entire time with THORChain, I have never seen this community more in agreement, more in alignment with the vision, ultimate purpose, and end state of THORChain. We finally have figured it out. And we couldn't have figured it out with the pain that we suffered. Go ahead, brother. You got your hand up.
Yeah, look, I'm admitting this may be fear that's speaking, but look, I have been an LP since 2021 as well, and I have been massively in the red. I still am. And look, I understand building, sometimes you got to do this and that, and you learn from your mistakes. My big issue is like when we were talking about sins and we were talking about the THORFi, and I was asking questions of like, okay, how does that make sense? Because he was like, oh, this means that, and this puts buying pressure. I'm like, look, this sounds nice theoretically, but can you explain in simple terms? And oftentimes, if you can't explain in simple terms, it kind of the math doesn't add up. I just want to make sure that we stay kind of like honest, and if someone asks questions and it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense to you, well, make it make sense, otherwise maybe we're missing something. So just want to make sure that we'll learn from this, and I really don't want to leave my positions in the red. I actually believe in THORChain's purpose and goal and mission, but I want to make sure that we don't trade quantity for quality. I think it's better uh, to ship less but higher quality and make sure it's like double, triple, quadruple checked. And if there's questions, maybe let's answer the questions rather than just like move forward regardless of that. So I just want to make sure we're careful.
Yeah, I
Because
totally agree. I agree with you, sir. I agree. And to make your point, even more is, yeah, we absolutely need to. We've had our slice of humble pie, right? I mean, in 2021 we had ChaosNet, and everyone knows we got exploited. That was the point. But it probably was a little worse than we could have let it. But I mean, this is just a tale as old as time. This is the human condition. We're all fallible creatures up here. I am fallible for sure. And yeah, I agree. And I think this is the point I'm trying to make to you is we've done that. We've tread the path. We've walked through the fire, and now we finally, for the first time, have a sense of what really works. And as an LP, like Flambammer advocated for you, I also advocate for LPs, not just because I was LP self-interested, because I knew how important it was to maintain the community. And that's why we paused, LP additions to the pools that were affected by synth leverage, trying to get the rune price up. And with Regira, with the optimizations that Chad is bringing, and many of the wonderful things that are going, new integrations, new chains, I think the future is very bright. It's just you got to hang in for a little bit longer. That's what I would think. So go ahead, Kenton.
I just want to give Chad a chance to speak and address
Oh, yeah,
the
absolutely.
concerns.
Well, so there's lots of topics that were kind of discussed over the last bit, but I'll start with the LP thing. So my opinion on the LP thing, and this is just my opinion, other people can have difference of opinions, is that we should just zero the synth units. So synth and saver people are getting their money back through the TCY, process. For LPs, I'd like to say it's just zero the synth units, and so you just get all your liquidity back. Most of the reason why you're in the red, if you're an LP, is because of the kind of leveraged rune with synth units, blah blah blah. So when rune price really dived and Bitcoin price hit basically all-time highs, for example, that obviously exaggerated that with the synth units. And so if we were to zero the synth units, everybody would instantly get back some percentage. I don't know if it's like 100% or 20%. I never did the math to figure out how much that would reimburse the LP people. That's like the thing that I would recommend. Now, not everybody agrees with me on this. There are some people who are LPs who want to keep the synth units. They want to have that kind of leverage because they see it leverages up as well as leverage down, and sort of room would perform well over the next 6 months or a year, or whatever, then it would do better for them in some ways. But I think that's what they argue. But
Chad,
my position
can
is
I
that
ask you to clarify something? When you say zero the synth units, you mean remove it from POL, so the protocol doesn't own that liquidity, and instead transfer it to LPs? Is that what you mean?
yeah, in a sense, right? Because when you have a synth unit, right, in the pool, it maintains 1 Bitcoin of value at all times. So if the rune price is going down, then the amount of LP units that the synth holders basically hold naturally increases. So you're taking value away from the LPs and you're giving it to the synth holders. And when rune price is going up relative to the asset, it goes the other direction. But if you just zero the the synth units, or the LP units of the synth holders, if you want to phrase it that way, then 100% of the pool value goes to all the LPs, and that's a good way to reimburse them in a in a single block theoretically. I know there's debates about that though, and I want to continue to have those conversations with JP and Alux over at Maya and figure out the best way forward in that regard. And I think what makes me more bullish on the LP side of things is really kind of the app layer, because the app layer is going to be adding perps and Bitcoin backed stable coins and order books and whatever else they got cooking there, and half of those fees are that's gonna be collecting is going to the LPs and the nodes. So there's going to be, I think there's going to be a significant uptick in kind of revenue generated by the protocol, largely due to app layer and increased like trade volume on these on new features like rapid swaps. Memoless transactions is another thing I want to see happen in the next 6 months, just 6 months or so, to help kind of generate even more volume and traffic and fees. So the more fees we can generate, obviously, the better it is for the LPs, right? And give them much more higher yield of real yield.
Hey, I'm going to let you go, Slam Bammer, in just a second. But Arno, I slung you a follow. Can you please give me a follow back? I'd like to keep tabs with you, okay? Because I really liked. I'm glad you actually came up and said that, because the one thing with THORChain excels very well, we don't censor nothing. Everything is open for debate, and that's the way this ethos started, and that's the way this ethos is definitely going to keep going in the future, as long as I have some influence about it. So yeah, please send me a follow, and I'll keep tabs with you, because I'm really glad you did that. Go ahead, Slam Bammer.
Yeah, just two very quick things. I think one also to me is I would say two things that keep me bullish as well. So even in the whole unwind, people stuck around and try and fix it. Chad's a good example. I mean, he's back, he's building with the project. He could 100% just have said, I'm not dealing with the smoke. JP as well. Man, I love that guy. He's really smart. Sometimes he comes out with some quite inflammatory statements that cause a bit of consternation. But overall, I'm glad that we have them. They're really good visionary people to have as part of the protocol. And I think one other thing that I would say is, look, I'm here. I'm a node operator. I'm fighting again as you are for the continuation and the recovery of the protocol. So yeah, if you ever have any concerns, you can always reach out to me. I'll help you have those discussions. No problem.
Rhino, I'd like to add my 2 cents as well. I absolutely 100% appreciate and sympathize with your pain. But there's also rune holders that have been hammered too, right? Bond providers, node operators, like everyone in the ecosystem has suffered. And I've not seen the passive rune holder or bond providers ask for bailouts. Everyone accepts the risk, right? This is crypto. I can hear somebody's got if someone can mute their speaker, there's some background noise. And so, at some point, LPs kind of have to accept that this is part of the risk they took, right? And just like me as a bond provider, node operator, I accept this as a risk I took, right? We're all down. So it's not like anyone in particular has been had it kind of any worse than anyone else. And so the way out of this is growth, is revenue, right? Getting the fees up and getting the room price up. And to do that, we need to continue to improve THORChain, make it more usable, get more users, all that good stuff. And you asked about, you made a comment, why, we have the driver who got us into the ditch, why put him back in the driver's seat? I don't know if you've been a part of any other blow-ups in businesses in the past. I have. And, when things start going south, management, directors, the figureheads, everyone just disappears, right? They just go AWOL. And you're left holding the bag and like, what's going on, right? And it's just poof. It's like the thing never existed in the first place. With THORChain, I mean, Chad was gone for a year already. He could have just stayed hidden and out of just done his own thing, right? He came back in the spotlight, in the limelight, right? You're not doing that if you're like, you're doing it because you want to help make things better, right? And the same with JP, like Slamhammer mentioned, we all kind of have a love-hate relationship with him, but I mean, the guy gets things done, and like, he's an absolute net benefit to THORChain, despite some of the things some of us might not like. Overall, he brings a ton to THORChain. And so, like, I want these guys back. I want them to stay. They're still here. They're still fighting. They're still working. And, you can maybe make an argument that maybe, ego, led things down the wrong way. Well, ego is also what help us get out of it, right? Because I don't think anyone building in THORChain wants to be remembered as, blowing it up, right? Everyone wants to be remembered as it's succeeding and, making a difference in the world. So, the fact that everybody is still here working and trying and delivering, and in my mind, is incredibly bullish, right? No one's run away or hiding. So, hopefully that helps answer your question.
And also, like, I understand, like, the visionaries, like, we wouldn't be here. We would not be here, all of us in this room listening together on this space, if it was not for Chad, JP, Heimdall, and the original visionaries of THORChain. If it was not for JP, who immediately understood the power of the app layer, which is something that we wanted to build. I mean, like, THORChain does swaps, but really our goal is to free the world economically. We're dead serious about that. Like, everyone's seen the pain, misery, objection, poverty, disease, filth, war across the world. That needs to end. And that's what we're here to do. And I really think that we're doing that. And it's great. And if anyone here, like, I don't really, like, I take some of the blame too, because, I was a participating individual when we had certain things like that. Like, I looked at the code, I thought about it, and I didn't foresee a lot of things that happened. So, I share blame as well. I mean, we're all sovereign individuals here trying to figure this out. But like I said, I'm so glad you came up here and you stated that, because I think things like that need to be said. They need to be heard by everyone here. And it's a good moment where we can all move on. I want to make sure we get to the other speakers here. I think Boone was next, Kenton. Is that right? If I'm not mistaken.
That's right. But should we give Rhino should we give him the final word?
Sure. Yeah.
Make sure you're okay, Rhino.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's great.
I appreciate that. Guys, thank you for hearing me out. I just wanted to voice concerns, and ultimately, yeah, sometimes you have to go back and fix things, and I'm okay with it as long as we learn from what we did and we don't let assumptions or theories get in the way of, like, healthy, tangible. And sometimes it's all about simplicity. Like, I'm really glad that all the THORFi stuff or the DeFi stuff is being left for an app layer, because the engine, protect the engine, let it work, let it do its thing, and like, take the risk away from that. So thank you for hearing me out. I appreciate the fact that you guys didn't, like, jump on me or anything like that. I understand the vision. I won't take any more of your time. So yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for being mature about it. Right? You weren't coming in hot, angry, yelling, accusing. You're being mature about it. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Okay, Boone, go ahead, sir.
I first requested to speak just to be pedantic. Really, earlier we had said that THORChain was the first one to remove emissions, and I just feel it's very important to note that Maya launched without emissions, so they at least had us beat. So yeah, just I feel I kind of in my head put them under our wing. So, but yeah, they did it first. But then just this recent conversation, I just want to echo what you and Kenton were just saying, and so Chad, I think Chad has only had good intentions, and like we all make mistakes, but yeah, I think the fact that he's back here and trying to make things better just speaks, volumes to his character. And the only way you can make progress is to try things out, and we wouldn't have streaming swaps, which has like been the game changer, if not for Chad. And so, yeah, you win some, you lose some, but the only thing you can do is move forward. And I think, I'm so excited for what we're calling limit swaps and rapid swaps. I think that's going to be as big as streaming swaps were. I think this is going to be even bigger. I think we're going to seriously be able to compete with not just other dexes, but actual like Coinbase and Binance on swap rates at this point, and do it just better than them. So yeah, I'm just super bullish on everything.
Shout out to Maya Protocol. Hell yeah. We love those guys. Go ahead, Kenton.
Yeah, I feel retarded for not knowing that. Thanks, Boone.
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing I guess you could say is that THORChain, Maya Protocol, they're OGs with that, but THORChain being able to transition from a emission system to a revenue system, I think that's probably an interesting metric too. So yeah, that's actually a good point, Boone. So thank you. Was it Morgan? Was Morgan next, Kenton?
I think so.
Go ahead, Morgan.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Okay, sir. My question is when can I find the latest update and information about your project? That's it.
You want? I didn't hear that. What do you want? Information update? What did you say?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Are you just wanting general information about what THORChain does? I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a language barrier here.
He wants information. Where can he get an update on and
Oh,
the roadmap of THORChain?
yeah. Let me. I'm going to follow you right now, Morgan. I don't want to take too much speaker time on that. I'm going to give you everything you need in your comments, and then you can look at all the specifications, documents, everything like that. So I'm gonna get your profile right now. I'm gonna close the mic. I'll get you everything you need right now, buddy.
And then SRD, I think, was next, but
He dropped.
Can you speak? He dropped? Okay. Was that it? I
Yeah.
think that's it.
I think so.
Okay.
Before I go to Morgan Slambammer, we were doing a space to get you more bonfires. We just kind of combined it with this one, which I think is better. Guys, and shout out to Chad because Kenton and I, and some others, we did the Bond the Rune campaign. I think it's been a very successful campaign. Obviously, I think we're just doing a churn. I haven't looked yet. I don't know if we're going to go back to 120, but we're like right there. We're at the cap. So absolutely blowout success, guys. I'm so proud of everyone, and I love you all. Great job. Slambander, I'll just give you the floor a little bit. You are a node operator, a new node operator. As you said, you stepped up to add to the decentralization of the network, and shouting out Ruintard. He's been super busy in training new unique node operators. That's something that THORChain I'm slumbering my words. I desperately needs. Why don't you go ahead and just give us a general introduction of yourself, your ethos, and go ahead, buddy. All yours.
Yeah, cheers. So as I said, I became a node operator earlier this year to help carry the network through the Thorfire unwind. It's been an experience learning. I will say that I think another thing that really makes me bullish about this project is just how committed people are in the space. So you mentioned Ruintard. That guy is incredibly idealistic and a great person to have in the community. He's effectively helping his competition, skill up and learn about the protocol and become node operators in order to strengthen the network. So I was one of those that took him up on his offer. And essentially, why it's important is the way I think of it is decentralization is like a safety net, right? When you don't need it, it's always sort of an interesting idea, and you sometimes think, oh, why is it there? Why do we maintain it? But when the pressure's on and when things are falling down, you're definitely glad it's there. And so I'm a I've got a node. I've been able to churn in a few times at the moment. I'm just at the lower end of the bond, so I've been churned out a few times. So I'm looking for a few more bond providers. Essentially, I'm very active in the community. I'm here to also help new node operators. I've been active on the Discord as well, and chatting to a few of the people that are thinking about setting up nodes. And yeah, I'm one of the people that's really active in the space and pushing for the protocol to continue to get better, and also to expand into new spaces and engage with more people, more chains. Because I think we have a really strong community within THORChain, but I think we need to start to try and reach beyond it and yeah, get more of the crypto space involved. So yeah, that's a bit about me. I'm more than happy to help anyone learn about bonding, learn more about the protocol. So yeah, if you have any questions or interested in bonding, just let me know.
Slambammer, are you on the runebond.com site by chance? Are you listed on there?
Yeah, I am. So the few things is my node is listed there. When you become inactive, you kind of get put to the bottom of the list. So yeah, you'll have to kind of look there. But I've reduced my fees. I really want to remain churned in. As I said, I've got strong opinions. Really want to help the network grow. So my main focus is to remain churned in and then grow from there.
Yeah, and a little partial shout out to Kenton as well, because during the Rune Bond campaign, because as you guys know, he is a node operator himself, and so he is competitive and he wants bond providers just like any node operator. But during our growth phase, when we were really kicking off the campaign, Kenton went above and beyond to give other node operators bond providers to help decentralize the network. So this is what I mean, like what Slambam was talking about the community. Like there is a form of altruism here that's really unusual when it comes to a competitive marketplace. Like Runtard, as Slambammer alluded to, he's technically training his competition, right? And so, guys, this is truly wonderful. So Slambammer, I can personally vouch for him. He's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful community member and now a node operator. If you guys have not bonded your rune, please consider Slambammer as an option to bond to. He's wonderful. Or if you are currently bonding your rune with somebody, don't necessarily take rune away from that node operator, but you can also bond more rune to another node operator with the same address. I don't know if people know that. So if you've got a little bond, a little rune sticking in your address, consider slinging it to Slambammer. Go ahead, Kenton.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you want to keep going.
Oh, well, no, that was about it for me.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of wanted to bring this back to Chad. So what kicked off the whole raise the bond campaign was increasing the security to make room for app layer. And then since then we've had there's been an ongoing debate about changing the hard cap on THORChain, which we did. We moved it from the bottom 2/3 of the nodes to bottom 2/3 of the rune bonded to all the rune bonded, which is what the cap was originally when THORChain launched in 21. And now there's still a debate about do we extend the cap beyond that, scale app layer, all kind of stuff. So I'm curious, Chad, what your thoughts are on raising the cap, the hard cap on THORChain. How high do you think we can go? Can it be done safely? Do you think we hold it where it is? Are you unsure? What's your stance there?
So here's my thinking: is that like it all really depends upon the success of app layer to me. Like how much liquidity is it pulling in? How many secure assets is it's basically fostering on the protocol? Because if you have a situation where you have say you do like a loan system on the app layer, right? Like a regular, like a regular loan that we've seen 1,000 times in DeFi world. And you put in your Bitcoin as your collateral and you get, USDC as your debt or whatever on all these, on the app layer. And you need to pay off your loan. But you can't do it because we're at the cap because you need to get the security assets, the USDC secured assets to pay off your loan to get back your collateral. So that becomes a really kind of disastrous situation if you can't repay your loan when you want to, right? Because we're at some sort of cap. So it becomes like a really kind of a concern that if you don't if the cap is still active, it becomes like a looming threat on the various DeFi apps on the app layer, which could hinder its success in some ways or form, right? So I guess my leaning is that the original kind of purest economic security position that we had in the beginning, I think it makes sense to some degree, but it has some real like scalability issues, I would say. Same thing with like CBD, collateral deposition, like stable coins. They're cool, they're nice, they're great in some ways, but they have some real scalability issue. That's why like 99% of stable coins is like Tether and USDC and not the other it's not there's other stable coins that are backed by some collateral of some kind. So there's just like some scalability concerns about the kind of the economic model that we originally kind of wanted to go through, and we needed to try it out to see in reality how that would actually manifest. So I think I'm leaning more towards a way of just doing what every other protocol does, which is just decoupling security and what assets you're securing. I think that's going to be to get THORChain to be the most successful possible. I think that's the route to go. But because it's so expensive to run a single node, let alone there's 120 nodes, so you have to buy up. How many would that be? That would be what 75 nodes. Buy up 75 nodes to do any kind of real damage, which would be how many millions of dollars would that be? 100 something, maybe even 200, depending on where the room price is now. So it's gotten to that point where like the amount of capital required to actually launch an attack is astronomically high. And that's the kind of similar, not to the same degree, to be fair, but like if you want to attack Bitcoin, you could have done it 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. You just can't do it today. It's just too the security is too high to make it viable for somebody to actually really attack it anymore. Not that say that's not like THORChain. Like technically, somebody has the money, they could actually go ahead and do it. But the amount of capital required is so fucking astronomical. There's just not that many people that are capable of even doing to begin with. And I think what's more valuable the protocol than like than security on paper is actual fees, actual volume, actual usage, actual value proposition. That's much more value to the success of the protocol in the long term.
I agree with you that you're not going to get 75 million rune on the open market to go into a node, so that's not going to happen. But what about the 75 nodes that already exist and breaking bad and deciding to collude and steal from the network?
Um, Yeah, I mean that is a theoretical thing. I think for anybody that is in those 75 nodes, like I think anybody who's a node operator today, whether it be Slambam or Kenton or whatever, they're highly aligned to the project. They want the success of the project. The success of the project in some ways is more valuable than the actual dollars that's behind it. The importance of what it is we're doing here is so significant that I think for most of us, including myself, it's just not worth it. But could they do it? Yeah, sure. It's a possibility. I'm not going to rule it out or anything. It'd be hard to do. It'd be very hard to do. Because like say Kenton wanted to become malicious. All right, so Kenton, talks to his friend Slamban and say, "Hey, Slamban, I think I want to start putting a coalition together. We're gonna rug THORChain." And then what does Slamban do? Well, maybe Slamban joins Kenton, or maybe Slamban is actually concerned and Slamban messages me, or JP and says, I had a conversation with Kenton where Kenton was trying to undermine the protocol or whatever. So there's risk to that as well. It's not as easy as just getting together, especially when you don't even know where half the nodes are or who runs half these nodes. It's the communication is difficult, and it's been designed that way specifically to make it that you cannot communicate with node operators directly, unless you dox yourself publicly, which I think at least half the nodes are not doxed publicly.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I'm running around trying to talk to people, I out myself, which then
Right.
if I go to an honest guy, he then is, oh, Kenton's doing this, don't trust him, and then my plan is unraveled. And Yeah, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. I'm not denying that. It just would be a very difficult task, and you'd have to get everybody who's doxed themselves in running a node are highly aligned to the project. Like, I sincerely doubt anybody who's like doxed themselves, publicly is probably pretty aligned to the product, and it wouldn't, join some malicious group of people to attack the network in one form or another.
And
It
I
just
actually,
seems
I mean,
extremely unlikely to me.
I think as the node operator set grows, there's going to be more and more doxed operators. I think it's hard to raise capital for a node being anon. So if I'm not saying all nodes should be doxed, as I'm trying to say, but if we have, a good third or half that are doxed, that adds a real element of security as well. I
I
think
mean, in
it's a
one
great
sense, it
mix.
also, like, the best kind of operator in some sense is the one that is not doxed, because trying to convince an operator that is not doxed to join your malicious intents is basically impossible. You wouldn't be able to trust that person. You have to give them your private keys. You'd have to, like, and how do you even communicate with somebody who isn't doxed? Like, I don't even talk to this node operator for this particular node. I have no idea who the hell they are.
Oh yeah, fair point. Yeah, I'm thinking the docs part being more not your ability to communicate, but just you get caught, like you'd go to jail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'd have to dox yourself in order to do this attack in some ways. You can't do it in a
yeah.
non-doc mentality, because you're not gonna, even if like Kenton had the intention of like rugging the network, he's not gonna trust some alias name that he has no communication or knowledge of, to that you're gonna operate together and steal the money, and he's not gonna steal the money from you, right? And work against Kenton's best interest, even though he wants to rug the whole network, whatever. It's a lot more difficult than it sounds at face value. And that's why I'm more leaning towards that way, because like what's really more valuable to us is just like getting more fees, getting more value, getting a perps dex, would be huge, right? It had a lot more liquidity, a lot more trade volume to the protocol, and that's much more valuable. And by having limits on this stuff, like the security limits, like we've had in the past, creates a shroud of kind of a cloud, a dark cloud above the app layer in some sense, because it's just kind of threatening. Like, well, there's a scenario that if things go a certain way, then bear market comes, and then this happens, and then then like all your shit's gonna like fall apart because you can't interact with it anymore, and that would just be um, you know creating a cliff to walk over in a sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's
Patriot. Sorry, go ahead, Patriot.
Oh yeah, no worries, brother. I think that's right, and I think maybe the really conservative security posture that we had is actually probably essential for the early adoption of the protocol. Like you mentioned, Chad, with Bitcoin. Now it can't be captured, and it could have been back then. So I think maybe once you reach a certain growth threshold, the super important security posture that we have actually, as you said, becomes an impediment in some way. And so yeah, I'm actually warming up. And if there's any Regurans listening to this, make sure you convey to that side of the community. We're all one community now, but make sure you convey that we are actively softening on this topic, and we're gonna probably let you guys grow to achieve your full potential. So you heard it here, okay? But actually, Chad, I actually had a question. Let me have a hypothetical here. Let's say Patriot Sounds becomes a node operator, and I go to Slam Bammer, and I'm like, hey, Slam
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Bammer, let's link up. Let's steal some fucking funds here. And then Slam Bammer goes to Kenton and says, dude, this guy you've been hanging out with is kind of a fucker. I just hope you know that. I'm curious. Okay, and now that then everyone knows I'm a bad node operator, right? Have we actually tested the code and used the code before in the history of actually kicking out a node operator? Does that work okay? Or are we sure that code works?
So there is a function called ban where nodes can vote to kick out a specific operator or node. Have we ever used it? I don't think we've. There was a couple times we got close in single chain chaosnet, long, 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 long time ago, and we've not had any problems since then that would require even considering this notion. The code is there. It is unit tested. Do I feel 100% confident that it would work perfectly today? No, I'm not 100% confident. I feel confident that if somebody were to do that, we could, it would work. But I'm not 100% confident that it does. We just add some more like regression tests. Like regression tests didn't exist when we implemented that feature initially. um, at that time. So there's like new testing frameworks that are more advanced today that we didn't have back then to be able to write even more advanced testing. So we could backfill that, no problem. But to my knowledge, it would still work. Most likely it would. I'd be surprised if it didn't, but it's a possibility that it doesn't.
Yeah, because like how my brain works, I just try and think of various things of why THORChain may not work, but stuff for like have like this quirky issue. I'm wondering if that's worth our time if a node operator would recommend getting banned, like would volunteer. Maybe we can give them like a little I don't know, little side money for the experiment. I just wonder if that was something that would be worthy to try, just to do it, have a proof of concept.
Maybe. I mean, I would want to do it like just within the code first, make sure that the unit tests are kind of, are exhaustive in its testing. And I would probably want to add some banning regression tests in the code as well. Like give me confidence within the code by itself first before we start asking community members to volunteer to get axed and forcibly removed from the protocol. But yeah, we can do that first in the code first just to verify it there, and then we can try. We don't even need to do it in mainnet. We can just do it in StageNet. We can actually ban one of the nodes. Like 9realms runs the StageNet network for the most part, and we can ban one of the nodes that way.
There you go. Slambammer, I thought I saw your mic open. Were you wanting to add something to this?
No, we moved on. Yeah.
Perfect.
I'll add quick. I'm softening to the idea of removing the hard cap too. It's basically if THORChain can't grow, we have all the security doing nothing. Like, what's the point? And it's not like we'd be hiding anything, right? It'd be, this is THORChain security posture, right? It's all open source, it's all public, it's all, if you don't agree with it, don't feel safe on it, don't use it. If you do feel safe with it, you do agree with it, then use it. Great. It's like buyer beware, right? And if the market is happy with it, then the market will use it. Saying that, I don't, it's not like we want to build a product where you have to read the fine print to know if it's safe or not. I don't think anybody here wants to do that either. But overall, it's if the market is happy to use it, then great. And that's why argue with the market?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a litmus test, right? Because we had really serious points in our past where node operators could have left out of self-preservation, right? And they stayed. So I think to your point, Kenton, I think we just have a really solid group of node operators. But I'm wondering at what point do we decide to go above 120? If now is the time we start thinking about that, or if we want to hang around and do bond wars for a little longer. That's something that goes in my mind. I'm not sure the answer on that.
I mean, for me, I would stick around 120 for a while. Just because adding more security beyond the place we are now doesn't really benefit like that much. You know what I mean? And having bond wars is probably more valuable to the protocol at this moment in time. That might change in the future. But one thing I kind of touching on what you just said a moment ago, like what's interesting now with the protocol, about the community more accurately, is we're much more aligned with each other. Like Thorfi was a very, contentious thing. It was a big divider in our community. We've done many votes over the last couple of years, either for it or against it. And, it's always a pretty good split between those 2 points. And same thing with like Bybit, about where do we stand on censorship resistance? Like, is that important to our culture? And Bybit kind of forced that question and with a more weight than we've ever seen it in before. And for some nodes that just couldn't get on board with that, and they kind of exited, which is fine. That's their choice. But now the nodes that have remained are kind of more like homogeneous in a sense. Everybody's much more aligned. Our kind of future view on the protocol and our roadmap is much more aligned. There's not much dissension as much as there was before. Like there's more unity today than there was before, which is really interesting. So that kind of makes things a lot easier in a lot of ways. We all just, for the most part, we all largely agree with each other on most issues. More so now than a year ago or 2 years ago.
Slambam, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think in terms of, I'm I'm of the opinion that we should think about increasing the node cap at some point in the near future. I think one of the main concerns around it is it's more of a technical limitation. So there is a priority at the moment to try reduce block times, and increasing the number of nodes adds a bit more complexity for getting that done. So I know it is on the horizon. I know it's coming. So yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it is. I think, and it's not even a hard change to change. Like the 120, I think is the number. It's just the default number that comes in Cosmos, I believe. So the code change really it should be a relatively simple one to increase that from 120 to, I don't know, whatever, 200, whatever. But I'm not sure like how much demand there is beyond the 120 number. Like, is there? I mean, if we lifted it now, would it go to 150 or just 121? You know?
can we
We
just
demand for 124 nodes right now. There's we're at 118, 9 looking to churn in. If we assume there's always 3 that'll be out, so 118
Yeah.
plus 6 is 124.
Okay, interesting.
can
So something I wanted to ask you too, Chad. If we went to 125 or 130, would that drastically slow down THORChain, or is it no? We could probably go just a little bit, just slightly increase.
I'm not far deep down the rabbit hole of the Cosmos Tendermint underlining consensus mechanism, but most likely it is an exponential thing. The number of communications required between nodes increases exponentially with every node you add. Most likely, I don't know if that's the actual case or not. I'm just making an educated guess. And so that becomes like a question about like how does that affect the block production, right? If one of the goals, as we just mentioned earlier, is we want to get block production down to like 2 seconds, and that's really valuable for arbs to be more efficient and trading to be more efficient and offer higher capital efficiency. That's a really good thing to do for the protocol. And if you put in 200 nodes, then maybe it's no longer 2 seconds anymore. Now it's going to be 5 seconds or 4 seconds, or I don't know, I'm making up numbers here, but and how does that benefit? How does that net negative? Is that a net negative or a net positive, having more nodes or having faster block times? And that becomes an interesting debate that people can have.
Yeah, it's like a sweet spot there for sure. And that's kind of how I imagine, like, that's how I was thinking, like, with your optimizations and other people's optimizations, like, you get down to 2 second block times, like, then we're super fast, which is great. But then it's like, well, what if we added another Asgard and got like 20 more nodes? So that's what I'm thinking. So I think we're going to find a sweet spot. It's a really interesting conversation with the Coke.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Chad. Sorry.
And there's new mechanisms coming out. I know I think some of the Strangelove team is working on. I can't remember the name. Is it Gornam? I can't remember the name of it. Something like this. But it's like a new consensus mechanism for Cosmos that is like much more efficient. It can do much more transactions per second. So there's also like possibilities of future upgrades of like improving the consensus mechanism underneath it all that to be much more efficient. So you could have 200 nodes and still have a 2 second block time. That's theoretically possible, in our theoretical future.
That makes you really bullish. I love that.
Yeah.
With the Coke, go ahead.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
Hey, hi, guys. Awesome talk. I love it. Touching different points, future, the past, everything. Just a little side note about the node count. Actually, we would have been 120 for last 5 churns already, but we just mess up the key sign, so people get jailed and they cannot churn in. So actually, I would say we are being 120 last at least 5, 6 churns.
Yep. Yeah, and by the way, when it comes to like, we've been talking a little bit about something called DKLS, which is a new kind of like cryptography as a way of like managing the vaults, which is much more established. It is mathematically provable to be secure. Its signing speed, keygen speed is significantly faster. We can go from 6 Asgards into a single Asgard, I think with TKLS, I believe. So that's one of the things I would like to see happen over the next 6 months or a year, is to move over to that new cryptography that's just going to be faster, better, more secure, and simplify the code in a lot of ways, which is a positive thing. So we can go to 120, 150 nodes in a single Asgard would be Fucking wild.
That would go a long way to making things more secure too. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
another thing I think about is, let's say we remove the hard cap, and then the argument is, well, the yield to nodes is what's keeping them honest because they want to earn that revenue. Well, then there's actually a bit of an incentive to keep the node count lower so that the average APY per node is higher, right? If a node is consistently yielding
Right.
20 to 30% APY, yeah, you're pretty highly confident they're not going to break bad or do anything nefarious. And at the same time, the less, like you said, less nodes, the faster the network means more. Faster the network means more trades, more volume. So it could become a question of, what's the sweet spot for the number of nodes? Maybe having the
Yep.
most nodes as possible isn't actually necessary because you get to law of diminishing returns. Maybe 150 is good. We don't need to do any more. It'll be interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, there's good arguments in both directions, to be fair, right? And bond wars is one of those things. Like, if the nodes are getting some massive yield, like 20% or 30% or whatever, then yeah, there's gonna be a lot of bond wars going on to get into that. If you expand it to be beyond that point, to be 150 nodes or whatever, then the yield's gonna be no longer 20 or 30%. It's gonna be something much smaller, and that's not necessarily a bad thing necessarily, but it is just a question of what are the incentives we want, right?
Well, correct my math. Maybe I'm making a simple blunder in my head, but let's say I have a magic wand and I increase the node count by double. That means if nothing changes on the ascendant pendulum, blah blah blah. That means nodes essentially their yields cut in half, right? But if the yields cut in half, yeah, or go ahead. Am I right about that?
Not exactly, because assuming the pools are the same, and have not doubled, then the amount of it wouldn't be half. You would get less than half, because the LPs, because there's so much room, and there's not the LPs are the same. The LPs would get a higher percentage of the system income, and nodes would get a lower percentage of the system income. So you would get at minimum half, but probably less than that. You'd probably be going, closer to 30% or 40%. I'm gonna guess.
Okay, good. So you're right about that. But let's say we double our node count. Let's say we get 30%, but then let's say our volume 100x's, right?
Hmm.
So I think for me, I just want to make the node count as high as possible because I'm thinking ahead like 5-10 years of the possibility. If we literally have the volume of Binance right now, I don't think people are going to sweat that losing that revenue relative to the amount of nodes that are in the network when we have such an exponential increase in revenue total. I think everyone wins in that case. That's how my mind thinks about it.
Yeah, I think, like, if you increase the bond, um, that to me does not necessarily give you more trade volume. It may have in the past because of the pendulum and the like, because we have more security, the TVL can be larger, which would generate more volume. Um, but one thing that Jake and I have discussed a little bit, and we're not quite sure how we feel about it, but just throwing ideas around. And it's something I think Maya has already done this. Is allowing LP units to be part of bonding. And the reason why that's really nice is because, um, as a bond provider, you can kind of, like, dip your feet in both pools, so to speak, and both revenue sources. So it would give node operators and bond providers the ability to put their bond basically into the pool. So they get the yield from the pool, but they also get yield for the bond as well, and it just creates more liquidity in the pools. Like, it ups the TVL quite significantly if you were to offer this idea. Whether or not we do it or not, I'm not quite sure. It's an idea. It's one of the ideas we've thrown around, to help get the TVL up. Because obviously we want deep pools. Deeper pool will always mean higher trade volume, always. Better execution, better on fees, faster streaming swaps. Um, Arbs will be trading much more volume because they have to, because the pools are deeper. Like, the deeper the pools are, the more volume you get inherently, and the more fees you collect. There's no avoiding it.
With the Coke, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the smartest guy, but yeah, I recognize the best project in the world, THORChain after Bitcoin. But shouldn't it be just like a function of 80-20 rule, like the classic 80-20? So 80% inactive, and if the people who wanna get in to the churn is approaching above 20, then we should raise the node count, and if not, then we should relax and let the bond war brew. Meanwhile, something like that, like just like a ratio between people who are in active sets and who wanna get in.
Yeah, that's fair. Different strokes from folks. But that's a one way to look at it.
Yep. So a succinct question and point there. Arno, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about kind of maybe it's a future question, but what are you guys' thoughts on using like AI models to verify economic assumptions or stuff like that? And also, I know that if there is strange activities on the network, node operators can pause swaps and stuff like that. But have you guys had any thoughts about incorporating AI mechanisms to look out for strange patterns like that and kind of proactively monitor the network or future code incorporations and stuff like that?
So the short answer is yes. If you go to my Twitter kind of profile, you'll see one of my latest tweets was something called Project Hugin, which was this idea that I wanted to work on kind of on nights and weekends, kind of thing, like a side project, and just start using artificial intelligence and applying it into as many different components of the protocol as we can. It wouldn't be like in the protocol itself. I don't think putting AI as part of the protocol would make any sense to me. That would just probably create more chaos than good, in my opinion, especially in these years. But to use it outside of the protocol for the dev process, for auto monitoring, like Thor node logs or Bifrost logs, to have AI analyze code changes for node operators so they can validate that there's no, like if I'd maliciously tried to just like mint 10 million rune into my personal wallet, like I made a code change that does this, somehow I maliciously is able to do this. Uh, Node operators could run this specific AI that would allow them, that would just check all the code changes and just flare anything that looks fucking weird, to be more defensive against people like myself. Yes, there's lots of things in the AI world that I'm interested in doing, and I've already started working on some of these things. But it is early in the AI world, and there's a lot of like false positives, and monitoring becomes very difficult because the more like if you get a bad noise to signal ratio in monitoring, you just mentally just check out of monitoring, and you're no longer even paying attention to any alerts that come up, and you just like whatever, you just kind of YOLO it, and it's just like a normal psychological effect of that. So I'd be concerned about like kind of false positives and how that can be detriment to our psychology in some ways. But I'm very bullish on AI in the long term. I think that's obviously going to become a larger and larger way, especially in the engineering world. And I'm definitely engaging with that wholeheartedly, to find out how we can use these technologies to best fit the protocol, best benefit the protocol.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I'm curious too, and I'm actually really thankful that you said that it wouldn't be in the protocol; it would be outside, helping with the developer team making, the code changes and various information streamline processes better. I think that's good. Chad, I was curious, would you have any opinions on AI trading bots? Do you think that's going to be a really huge thing on THORChain? What do you think about that?
It can be. I think somebody's going to start mucking around with that and try. I don't really like fully understand it. Like we've had trading models for decades in general, and that's nothing new in that concept. Using LLMs, because LLMs is really what we're talking about when we talk about AI. Like, yes, there's machine learning, yes, there's neural nets, yes, these other things, but like 90% of the conversation in AI conversation is really around LLMs, and I really do not think that LLMs are useful in this in some sort of trading algo mentality. I think that's just gambling with something that doesn't really understand what you're trying to do to some regard. Like it doesn't make any sense logically to do this personally. But trading models have been around for forever, and to building a bot that trades based upon some model, sure. Like I'm sure that people have already done that to some degree.
Cool stuff. Kenton, do you have something?
Yeah, I want to actually go back to what we're talking about, raising the hard cap. If we got rid of the hard cap, we'd have to reevaluate the incentive pendulum. Have you thought about that, Chad? Like, should we just split it 50-50 between nodes and pools? Yeah, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and I've put a little bit of thought into this, but not a lot. Um, I don't want it to. I wouldn't go the whole 50-50 route. I still want to have the incentive that we want people to bond, or we want people to provide liquidity into a pool to be relative to each other to some degree. But you have to also incorporate, I think at that point, you have to incorporate that any secured asset is considered part of the pool in the pendulum. You see what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah,
To be honest, I have to think about it more deep, because even if you do that, it becomes problematic, because it effectively mean that all the yield will go towards bonds, because the TVL is so high, because you have the pools plus you have all the secured assets, which is assumably going to be a high number, and then you get mostly the yield goes to the bond providers, and very little yield goes to the LPs, and that's a problem. So it's a difficult thing to kind of figure out. I spent a little bit of time thinking, but I really need to spend more time on it.
that's kind of why I'm thinking about it too. Because like going back to your limit swaps and order books on Rogera and stuff, like if I mean, in theory, if those are really successful, then the pools would actually would be used less, right? I mean, this would be good to have them because it'd be like the buyer seller of last resort, but the majority of volume would be on those like limit swaps and order books. So we wouldn't necessarily need huge or deep pools anymore anyway, right?
Yeah, you can look at it that way. That's a fair way to look at it. I hope that's the case. Like that would be wonderful if the app layers has more volume than the base layer. Like that would be fantastic. Um, and if that is the case, then we'll handle it appropriately as a community, as a team.
And if we
But yeah,
still wanted to have sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I say if we still like the idea of having the pools as that buyer of last resort, instead of maybe having them swap fees, be able to bond the LP units, and that's how they get the yield. So it's still encouraging people to be LPs, but the way they get their yield is through bonding them.
Yeah.
I don't know, thinking out loud.
Yeah. No, keep thinking out loud. Throw ideas around. Let's debate. Let's argue. Let's find a consensus.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things is because if I think of myself as an LP, the risk profile between LPs and node operators, just in the system we have now, I know we're gonna be making tweaks as we go, but it's not the same. And so for me, it was always hard as an LP, like looking at the incentive pendulum and realizing like, well, the pendulum kind of swings on a ratio of the liquidity between the nodes and the security, between the pools and the security bonded by the nodes. But that doesn't really tell the whole story, because as an LP, like for a swap, it's contingent on if someone makes a swap in my pool. So I think one of the first things that can help address this is actually kind of doing the Maya route, where you can bond those liquidity units, because then it kind of ubiquitizes from an LP standpoint that they can make yield by providing liquidity to the pools, and it's not just a swap that's contingent on the pool that's selected for the swap. Because especially with like new swaps like XRP, initially when you have a new pool, it's hard to convince LPs in the system we have to go, because the volume, and Luna was the one case where that's not true, of course, but it's hard because if you deposit LP in there, it's like, well, the swap volume's not going to be good, it's going to increase probably my impermanent loss risk, blah blah blah. I think you know what I'm saying. Actually, Boone's up
Yeah.
here. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, chicken and the egg problem, which is why the treasury likes to put in some money in the beginning of these pools, to some degree at least, to help kind of seed some reasonable liquidity to kind of solve the chicken or the egg. If there's no
Right.
liquidity, there's no trade. If you can't trade, there's no fees, no liquidity, and it just becomes this kind of infinite circle of, you know, of difficultness. So I think the treasury just kind of like, eats it and just throws in $100,000 or $200,000 into a pool just to seed it, so it has some reasonable amount of liquidity to start it, and will hopefully let the community, or the capitalistic markets to help fund it further.
Yeah, precisely. Go ahead, Boone.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this just touches on that idea I floated yesterday that a lot of people seem to kind of like, which was repurposing the burn into seeding basically protocol owned liquidity in the smaller pools, probably the newer pools, as a way to solve that chicken and egg problem. I think just relying solely on the treasury, the treasury only has so much funds, and it can only do so much. um, and then if we go back 5 minutes in this conversation, it also, like, theoretically, if we do that over time, um, as Kenton was pointing out, we don't really need that much depth in the pools if we're using these limit order swaps and rapid swaps, where you're still going through the pool, but you don't need the depth because almost every trade is immediately countered, right? And so
Yep.
it doesn't move the price that much. And if we could switch to a primary liquidity model of protocol owned liquidity, then we don't really need to pay. Like, it's just one less place that revenue needs to go. We don't need to pay LPs, and it's just that much more capital efficient. And so I know a lot of people, there was a lot of conversation about this idea yesterday, and maybe it's a good time to bring that up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to the idea of, like, if I understand what Boone was saying, instead of burning the burn rune that we're currently burning, just basically just like deposit it into a pool or a series of pools, have it owned by the protocol itself. Yeah, I think that makes some sense, because at least the difference here is, like, just to compare the two notions. When you burn rune, what you're really doing is you're redistributing the value of the market cap, from the person that you're burning from, whoever is the current owner of that. And you're distributing it more or less relative to pro rata to how much room each person has. That's what you're doing, which is good in some sense. But I've never been a fan of distributing value to rune holders that are not participating in the protocol, like cold wallet rune holders. Like, I don't want to incentivize them to do that. It's a more efficient use of capital to put that towards people who are LPing or bonding or taking an active participation. You want to reward those people, in a sense. But if you do this whole POL thing, then yeah, you're slowly building the pools over time to create a solid foundation that we're never going to have less, value in the pools than what the POL basically holds, because the POL will never, withdraw or sell or whatever, you know. Well, I don't want to say never. Things can change. People can vote in one direction or another, but that would be the starting mentality, at least.
Yeah, I think reducing the risk of LP capital flight is actually a really smart thing, just to really harden up the protocol. I actually really like Boone's idea, because I think you said, Boone, like, if we had the last 30 days had redirected, like, maybe, like, imagine some Amir that nodes can control, where 100% of that once was burn rate going to the pool, it would have almost doubled the size of the pool, if I remember.
It would have been 42% deeper, so, like,
Oh,
almost half
okay.
again as deep as it is.
Which 30 days, that's not insignificant. And like what Kenton and Boone and others have been saying is, THORChain is so stupidly capital efficient, and we're only going to get even more retardedly stupidly capital efficient. It's amazing what we can accomplish with a relatively shallow pool. It's truly incredible. Go ahead with the Coke.
Yeah, I just have to chip in this as well. Like, the burn of the 5%, it kind of came from the scrambles of the Thorfight collapse, and it is not efficient use of the capital. And that, I don't have the link, but I remember I read like article about the whole burn mechanism, and it was like research, and it said, like, at the end, when it comes to numbers, it doesn't add up. maybe it's a narrative driven. Yeah, we tried it. It kind of didn't bump the price anyway. So I'm on board to use this 5% in like a logical manner as well. We as a community, we are such a smart guys here. We have these open discussions. I think we can use this 5% of the revenue, and by just leveraging our knowledge, we can boost it to basic like 20%. So we can make this capital even more efficient than just burning and throwing the money away. So I'm totally in a I would love to have this discussion maybe next week or week after, like what should we do with this 5%? It should not be just burnt. I think burning 5% is the just like the easiest way to get rid of the money, and like making a charade or show that we did something for the community. But
Yeah, but
as a
just keep in mind though, if you don't burn it and you take it and say you like put it into like a POL kind of thing, protocol on liquidity, what's really happening underneath the hood is that you're taking basically half that rune, market selling it into whatever pools we're putting the rune into, Bitcoin or Ether or whatever it is. So you're having like a little bit of a market sell, like half the amount approximately.
yeah, I
Which
absolutely
No, there's no sell
maybe that's
pressure.
okay. Like,
There's no sell pressure, right? Because it's all revenue, right?
well, you
It just depends where you draw the box.
yeah, and I would say let's say even if it's like 2.5% will be market sell. Let's be honest, 5% market buy didn't affect the price that much upside. So the flows of the capital, the people who want to come in, go out, actually move the price way more in excess than this 5% or 2.5%. So having like a protocol owned liquidity that increase like this is builds up our like a cushion for failure as well. As Patriot said, like if times get hard, I think this time when the THORChain collapse actually happened, I think a lot of the for the major in a big sense, we were saved by the protocol owned liquidity as well. We had this safety cushion. Like, okay, let's say a lot of people went for exits, but still we could maintain the business. So it gives us like this, like a fail safe, so we can experiment more. And by experiment, I mean just innovate. We don't want to experiment and blow things up, but it gives us this like a cushion.
Yeah, I've actually been putting together, I'm writing like a long form kind of defense of my argument. And just so over the last 30 days, the burn has averaged like 2.6 thousand dollars, so $2,600 a day, and the rune token does like 100 and let's say 20 million in volume a day. So like a 2,600 buy into 130 or 120 million of volume is nothing, right? So it's the price impact of the burn is negligible. At least in the short term. Over long term, sure, it can start to add up, but I would just simply argue that we're not in the stock buyback phase of a business. We are in the let's do growth phase of a business, and investing into our own protocol by way of liquidity is probably a smarter use of those funds. And yeah, so over that same 30 days, it was about $78,000. Adding that to the XRP pool, which is about, $200,000, that's a significant increase in the depth of that pool. And like what the coaches pointed out, like that's, protocol and liquidity is something we can always fall back on. And so I just think it makes a lot of sense. And then I'll be fleshing out my argument in a long form essay as well.
Yeah, and even if I go more obnoxious, I have to say, like what we learned when it came to XRP. Yes, we integrated new chain, and we get like on some days we get like 10K volume, 40K volume, or whatever. It's such a small volume, and as I do indeed many times with Patreon or Eric in the XRP community spaces, they just don't know about THORChain. We have so much ground to cover when it comes to just being recognized, being known in the business. So I feel like just burning the money is hurting us. We should let's use this money to market ourselves. And Kenton is working on something. I don't know what. It's not that public. So I think in that reason, like let's at least have either cushion or at least show ourselves to the outer public or the. There is so much more to do with this 5% because, as I mentioned before, we have the brain cells, guys. We can leverage this 5% to be like a 20% outcome. Let's not
Really,
just throw it away and call it a day.
I agree with you with the Coke. I totally agree with you, Boone, about the growth phase of THORChain. The capital can be used better. And that's what I was thinking about actually is that money could go towards marketing. Like I have been working on this for a few months now, and I just if you guys heard me ranting about having our own front end, it's really difficult to come up with a marketing plan for a third party, and even if the third party is on board, and like I was trying to figure something out with Trust Wallet, and we could spend all this time and energy marketing Trust Wallet, but they're just going to route. There's no guarantee they're going to route trades to us, right? And with Ledger, at least you go on there and you can select THORChain. So maybe I'm going to hit change gears towards Ledger. Maybe we can do something there. But still, I think it's more important for us to have our own front end, whether it's a third party that is managing it or not. We can figure that out later. But have like THORChain.swap or whatever we want to call it, and we can market that and drive volume to that. I still think having integrations is great. I think we should still integrate new wallets. I don't think that should stop. And I don't think it's going to vampire attack users from other wallets either. I think it'll just open up a whole new audience for us that we can tap into. And so there you go. That 5% that's being burned, we can put some of that money towards a new front end, towards marketing. And, people always, how many times you guys seen on Twitter where it's like there's a chart, of all these, 10 or 15 protocols, and THORChain is never on it. And the reason is because that's not real research. It's paid for marketing, and you have to pay to get your protocol on it. Like Masari and all these other so-called research platforms, you have to pay to get in. And they're just copy and pasting the TradFi investment research model. It's all pay for play. So if we want THORChain to get out there and be recognized, we have to pay for it. That's just how it goes. And it's not like you can just do it once. You have to do it like continuously. Like press releases, for example. We have the new Ripple pool. We should press release that. But it's like 10 or 15 grand to get it out on all the different wires, maybe even more. You can't just do one press release and be like, okay, it's done. We've done our marketing. Like, no, you have to do that for years. So if we've got a percentage of revenues going towards that kind of marketing every month, we can be on top of it, consistent, and just constantly just like getting the message out there, paying to get it in front of people. And that kind of marketing takes time. Just saturating the market with your with our content. But so I'm jumping all over the place. For me, with marketing, that's like a secondary goal. The primary goal of marketing is to get users, to get do some kind of SEO or paid for click, to get people to swap on THORChain. So we get volume up, get the revenue up, get the proof of concept up from marketing. That gives us more money from marketing that we can go and put in press releases and other kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree with you guys. The money being spent on the burn could arguably be used for much other things that have much more impact today. And somebody requested to speak. I'm gonna go let them come up. CK Cardano. I'm approving you right now.
Yeah, when it comes to like the marketing, I was a co-founder of Estonian biggest female fitness wear brands, and that for sure taught me marketing is key. It doesn't matter how good stuff you have, how cheap or whatever. Marketing associating yourself with the brand, and also building a brand repetition, recognition, and the how the brand looks for the outer good. I think this is that's what we are lacking a lot. We get attacked every day by haters, by Zach XPT or whatever the people are, and I think the public image is kind of not at the best at the moment. So marketing, association, getting some bigger players speaking about us is a key. Is a key.
I agree that be fit in the PR component, public relations, right? And again, that's something that it has to be ongoing. It's not a one-time, like 3-month, 6-month contract, and then you're done. We basically have to commit to doing it permanently and have a permanent budget. It doesn't have to be, $5 million a year, but like it has to be some known amount per month so that we can commit to it. But I completely agree with you. Like we should be doing it because I think this is where a lot of the cryptos that succeed, everybody's wondering like, oh, it's, these meme coins, that's not how they have such a huge market cap and THORChain doesn't. It's because they market, they promote. They may not like the way that they're winning, but they're promoting it. And we have zero promotion with THORChain. So if we put a little bit of effort into it, I'm positive it's going to work. And the great thing with THORChain is that we have real revenue. We have continuous money coming in, whereas all these other protocols, they don't. And so, a lot of their marketing budgets are fixed. They can only do it temporarily or one time or whatever. Whereas if we have an ongoing one, consistent, it's kind of like walking and eating healthy every day. It'll pay off dividends over the years. And that's what XRP and Ripple and Cardano, they're fantastic at marketing. They get the message out. That's why every normie friend that you've had, when they ever come and ask you about crypto, they always ask about Ripple and Cardano. It's like, how do you know about these? They don't know about any other crypto, but they know about those. It's because they've nailed Web 2 marketing. This old fashioned getting the name out there. So I think THORChain should do the same. CK Cardano, you want to jump in?
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me up, bro. I really do appreciate that, Ken. And shout out to the room. Shout out to THORChain. I saw you guys having a space and just wanted to drop through and say how excited I am to hear that you guys are out here, that you're having conversations, you're moving the project forward, you're talking about marketing, ways to grow the chain. Kind of on that point, and just in generally on the freedom liberty piece. I think a really strong piece of the marketing for THORChain is that THORChain empowers Bitcoin. Okay, THORChain empowers Ethereum. THORChain empowers Litecoin. It helps fulfill the vision that Satoshi was going for, right? Because think about it, right? When we have our assets in Binance or Coinbase and these things, reality is a lot of people like to talk about is there manipulation in the market? How free of a market are we truly seeing? How coupled with incoming demand is the supply side, is the spot price that we see, when we look at, say, Bitcoin. So thank you again for allowing me some time. But for Bitcoin, for instance, let's say just theoretically that Bitcoin has a liquidity pool of 40,000 Bitcoin, right? And there's rules on TradFi where you had 48 hours to make your books honest, right? So if we did a lot of business and I moved $1 million from A to B, on the other side of the world, I would typically have 48 hours settlement rule to make my books honest. Well, think about this, right? Let's say that you're Coinbase and you're custodying 5,000 Bitcoin for someone in the Middle East, let's say, right? And then unexpectedly, they come to Coinbase and say, hey, we'd like our 5,000 Bitcoin into self-custody. So they come, they treasure off their Bitcoin. Now, what does Coinbase do? They have that 48-hour rule. And if you have 40,000 Bitcoin worth of liquidity, and let's say retail demand in the United States is 10,000 Bitcoin, you're put in a position where all you have to do, like FTX did, is update account dashboards, right? So if you're Bob, Sue, and Jill, and Bob puts in $100, Sue puts in 1,000, and so on, if you're Bitcoin and you have enough liquidity depth, you are decoupling from market demand, incoming buy orders in US dollars, yen, what have you, any currency. So what this does again is it's unhealthy, and it puts power in the hands of centralized actors like Coinbase and Binance. What THORChain does is impose honesty on the market, damn it, and it empowers us where I don't have to KYC myself and go into the Caesar's land, render unto Caesar style. So I think that there are aspects of THORChain that on the marketing side and just the education piece for the community that, like, even if you're not, participating in liquidity, if you're just a big fan, if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, damn it, I do not see why you are not pounding the drum for THORChain and Maya Swap, or Maya Protocol. Those are my two favorites. I respect greatly the open source approach of both of the projects, because to me, what you're doing, I talk about, when we were all in school and you're maybe in a hard class, you get a group project and you're like, oh God, we're proper screwed. No, I don't know how to do this. But then in your group is the quiet kid in the corner you never talk to that ends up being the damn genius. Everyone gets an A because this kid has some crazy savant ability. That's what happens when you open source projects to the world, right? You are crowdsourcing the minds of all those quiet kids that you didn't know that can get the A. And to me, that's infinite value creation. That's infinite problem solving. That's infinite freedom capability, right? And so as we do our educational piece and we say, hey guys, you can make more of this money yourself. Like right now, if you have, a couple pieces. For one, just the inflation. If you had $1 million in a US account on January 1st this year, you now have $900,000 worth of value. Just to put a little color on the inflation in the US dollar. So not only is there obviously growing adoption of cryptocurrency technologies, but the dollar is very unwell. Why do I bring that up? Let's say that you have your dollars currently deposited in a US bank, right? The way that it works, you might have $1 million that they're lending. They're making 10, 15% on it and giving you 2, 3, 4%, right? What cryptocurrency is doing by us taking charge of our liquidity pools and our banking, we can then get that yield on our assets. So if we're sitting there on $50,000 worth of savings, $100,000, whatever it is, by being our own banks, by participating in things like THORChain, getting involved in liquidity, getting involved in lending and borrowing and stable coins and all these things, guys, it allows us to reap the benefit of that plenty. It allows the people to actually have the productive output of our collective capital, and that's very powerful. And THORChain and these sort of decentralized atomic cross-chain swapping capabilities and protocols are essential instruments in that effort to liberate humanity economically. So I just really wanted to come up here and say that in so many words, because I think part of the marketing story for the THORChains and whatnot is not only the exceptionally compelling aspects of the project itself and what THORChain brings to the market, but the ways in which these open source freedom technologies and approaches that we never saw coming on Halloween night 2008, right, when the white paper was released, these are new maturations and organic manifestations of what freedom means, and I'm bullish for it. And so THORChain telling that tale, getting this freedom technology to the people, I'm excited about it. I'm out here pounding the drum all day, every day. So I'll land the plane with this, guys. I often, because that's what I do with most of my time, is just I'm out here trying to educate people, get people in these technologies, get your freedom, own your money, own your time, own your hours, and all this. What is the distinction between, say, THORChain and THORSwap? Like these accounts, are they just kind of two entities of functionalities? Just because I used to rep the THORChain account, but then THORSwap seemed to be more maybe socially active. So is there a difference? Should I be supporting repping both? Is there any kind of maybe color or clarity on the THORChain THORSwap relationship?
Sure, yeah. So I can tell you the origin story of THORSwap was that in the early days of THORChain's history, when we were first building it, and I was in Melbourne, Australia, and me and JP were working with Heimdall, blah, 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 people. And so we hired this guy to build what at the time we called BepSwap, because at the time it was BNB only, not Beacon Chain, just before Beacon Chain. Sorry, before the Smart Chain, Binance Smart Chain. And so he built like a UI that was going to be kind of the front end of THORChain, and he did it as part of the team initially, and then eventually he wanted to break off into his own his own project, and so he asked for basically money from the treasury to fund this, and we gave him a bag of money, and so he created something called THORSwap, which was I think the intended goal was that it wouldn't just do swaps with THORChain, it would also integrate with other dexes or other sources of liquidity and trade routes. And so they're a separate project done by separate people, kind of birthed out of the THORChain community in a literal sense. But they are their own, they stand on their own 2 feet. They have their own income these days. It's a good project, one of many. And it's actually one of the reasons why we've never really pushed on the whole marketing thing. Is that the marketing kind of the mentality was kind of like THORChain doesn't really need to do any marketing. What needs to do marketing is THORSwap, right? And other wallets in the industry, and just let those wallets be more successful and let them market themselves, Trust Wallet and Ledger and THORSwap and whatever other wallets out there. Like, get wallets in the door, let them bring us the volume, so that a lot of times people don't even know they're interacting with THORChain. It's just something that happens in the background, and providing really good service for them, but they aren't even consciously aware that they, like, most people, like I know Kenta was talking about, like, people don't even know what THORChain is, and that's true. Like, sometimes when I go to conferences, whatever, people don't even know what the hell THORChain even is. But I think a lot of those times people have used it, they just don't know they've used it. Like, same thing with Shapeshift, in the audience there. Shapeshift uses THORChain in the background, and so people think they're trading with Shapeshift, and then they are, but Shapeshift is utilizing THORChain along with Uniswap and other sources of pathways and stuff. So there's an argument you can make that the THORChain should not do marketing. It should get the wallets to do the marketing, and that's a legitimate argument. Like, it's a legitimate stance to have. Whether that's the correct stance or not, I don't know. We can have that debate. I honestly don't even know how much the treasury has in capital right now. I don't know if it's like 5 million or 10 million or what the number even is.
I would say it's amazing that THORChain has this the way we are. Like, we have the back end, we have the front end. The front end is like the soldiers who run. But to have more bonders and have this like a core functionality working as it should, to have the acquire the security, we kind of have to actually market ourselves as well. So that's the thing that we have to keep in mind.
Yep.
Yeah, my position is just have our own front end, do it in addition to all of that. Like, just like we can keep going with the wallets and do their marketing and all that kind of stuff. Great. It's not either or. We can do our own in addition to them.
Yeah, but I think the result, though, if THORChain does marketing, like say, hey, you should use THORChain. THORChain's great. You can get really great price execution on Bitcoin trades, blah, 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 right? That's my marketing poster that I'm putting on a billboard somewhere. Then the first question they're going to ask is, oh, great, like, how do I use it? Well, you should go check out AsgardX or THORSwap or Trust Wallet or this. So your marketing is really marketing for those wallets, right? In a matter of speaking, and you're basically doing their marketing for them. Now, it's still in our own benefit. We get back some value from all that, of course. Unless we have like a THORChain kind of official wallet, so to speak, which we've never really had, historically speaking. I'm still down to building a wallet myself at some point. Not even a wallet, just more of like a interface to trade. Once we have the memoless transactions feature kind of landed, and you can do a THORChain swap without needing to embed a memo into your transaction. So you can swap from any wallet in the world. It doesn't matter. You can just go to, like, Chad's wallet, chadswappingservice.com, or the hell it's going to be called. And it just gives you a QR code, and you just scan it, send it, and you can trade on THORChain without needing a special wallet or whatever. Like, I think that's going to be a big thing. And
I
it'll be
thought
like near free.
Memolith was kind of scrapped. Is it still on the table? Is it the same design you're talking about? Is it a new design?
It's still on the table. It's one of the things we want to get done this year is memoless. There's really like two schools of thoughts on it. There's one, I've actually done the coding. The coding's actually already done. I did that like a year and a half ago, or I think it was, or maybe even 2 years ago. It's just mostly just picking it up and kind of getting it across the finish line, so to speak. The design is there's two different design ideas. One is when you do a trade, you have to establish some sort of unique identifier so that you know what the trade intention is. What somebody's sending you some Bitcoin, usually the memo tells the protocol, what they want to do. They want to trade to Ethereum at this price or whatever the hell it is, and create a secured asset, whatever. So you need some other way of uniquely identifying those transactions. And there's two mentalities. One is which is basically doing what the rest of the industry more or less does, which you have what's called an HD wallet, a high quality deterministic wallet, where you can have thousands, hundreds of thousands of addresses that go to the same private keys. And so you generate a new unique address basically per memo, right? And then people just send money to that address, which is still the same private keys as the Asgard vaults, just a different wallet to get to the same place, different address to get to the same wallet. So that uniqueness allows you to be able to identify who that trader is and what their memo intent is, by that kind of way of identification. The problem with this, though, is that it puts a lot of more stress on the node infrastructure to be able to watch, maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of more wallet addresses than just the 6 that it monitors today. The 6 Asgard vaults that it monitors today. So it's a lot more work. And then you have to worry about in some chains like UTXO consolidation is a concern, right? And what do you do when you send the non-gas asset to a new wallet address that doesn't have any gas in it? So then it becomes a problem of well, you can only support this really for gas assets only, and maybe that's okay because that's vast majority of the trades anyway. So that's one way of doing it, and there's cons to that approach. The other way of doing it, which is the way it's currently coded, is actually embedding a unique identifier in the amount that you're sending. So if you're trying to send 1 Bitcoin, what you will actually send is 1 Bitcoin plus, within 10,000 sats, some sort of 5-character number that's like your identification number, like in the last few sats of the trade. So as long as you send the money correctly in terms of the amount, then everything will work just as fine. It requires almost no changes to Bifrost or either the code. It's clean, it's simple, it's less prone to issues in some ways. But of course, there's negatives that where somebody, scans the QR code on their phone, it creates a transaction. They see that it says 1.00001543, whatever, and they're like, I don't want the 543, blah, blah, blah. And they just put it to 1 and they send it and it doesn't work. And then it causes a refund and then they're confused and it's a bad UX. And there's pros and cons to both approaches, but I think the feature is something I think would be very valuable to the protocol. It's one area that Chainflip does fairly well too, that I want to become more competitive on. And once we have that, I want to build a UI that takes advantage of that and it only charges 1 BIP in fees. So you basically have a near free way of trading on THORChain that is quick, easy, fast, very, very not featureful, but just very simple, quick, and to the point.
Well, Chainflip's front end can be buggy with connecting the wallets I've experienced in the past. So a memoless transaction website would be, in essence, have 0 bugs, right? It should be very, very smooth and clean, right? 'Cause you don't have to connect your wallet.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, it's a lot easier. Right? You don't have to connect your wallet anymore. You just have to do a transaction, but you just have to do the transaction correctly,
Yeah.
and that's where the trouble comes in. If you fuck around with the wallet address, or you fuck around with the amounts, or you fuck around with it with some way, so you have to when you do this, you have to put a big giant alert or notification on the screen. So it's please do not send your money to other addresses. Please do not change the amount that's being transferred. Keep it where it is. Don't touch it. Just send it, kind of thing. Verify it, but don't manipulate it.
Does any other DEXs or protocols use memoless transactions, or would this be a first to use it like that?
It would be first for us. I don't know if Chainflip has if they have something conceptually similar. They probably do, I would assume.
Okay, but going back to the memoless type, using sats at the end of the end of your actual amount, as long as if they do enter in the wrong amount of Bitcoin, if it gets returned to them, That's huge. That's good. At least they don't risk losing it. But I guess if they entered in a different address, then they could lose it forever. But I guess you have to be
If you
pretty daft to change the address, I would think. Um,
if you do it the address way, that's probably less prone for issues from the user's side, right? I think that's less likely to have problems. You're more likely to have problems on the protocol side because you're doing something that is a lot more complicated than how things work today. So there'll be issues, there'll be bugs you have to iron out over time, whatever. The amount thing, you embed the information in the amount, that's more user fuck upable in a sense. And as long as you if you just change to 1 Bitcoin flat, then you'll just get a refund and you'll get your money back and you'll be confused why it didn't work. But if you don't like 1254 at the end, you want 1257, and you just manually change it and you don't have a memo, then you might be sending your money to somebody else. And well, that sucks, right? But you have to manually do that to fuck it up, by hand. And so that's why you need to put a good notification on the screen that says, the amount is really important. Please do not touch it or increase it or decrease it. Just leave it as is, and everything will be fine. But if people fuck around with it, they could send their money to somebody else's ether wallet address, something like that.
And the problem with having a website, say like THORSwap, where you connect like a dozen different wallets, the headache or the problem with maintaining and creating a site like THORSwap is supporting all those wallets. That's actually the difficult part. Having the swaps go through THORChain, that's the easy part. So by having a website that just does memoless transactions, that would be a very easy website to launch and maintain. Am I right?
Yeah. The website itself would be remarkably simple and remarkably easy. It'd be so small and easy to use because there would no be there wouldn't be a requirement to connect your wallet. You just say, hey, you just tell what you want. I have Bitcoin. I'm going to send you 1 Bitcoin, and I want to get ETH on the other side, whatever, and it just designs a memo and then broadcast a transaction on THORChain to register that memo with with your transaction that you're about to do, and then you send just do a transaction of 1 Bitcoin to this address with this amount, which is embedded in the QR code. Like when you do the QR code scan on your phone, whatever, it'll just it'll pre-populate everything correctly for you. And then you can verify it before you hit send if you want to, and then that's it. It's the fastest way to do a trade or a swap by far. It's the fastest, easiest, and simpler way of doing a swap would be that way, without a
At,
doubt.
at first blush, it's like doing something different. We got to train the user on how to use a new interface. But if you think about it a bit deeper, this could be huge because how many people, even like savvy crypto users, have had their wallets drained because they connect their wallet to a malicious website, and how many savvy users again actually avoid that altogether for that very reason. And if memory serves me, I want to say his plan B was talking about swapping Bitcoin for Tether or something, and then the Thor chads got in his feed and was actually engaging with them. And he's like, "Oh, I don't want to connect my wallet to a website." And they're like, "Oh, well, memoless transactions is coming, blah blah blah." And that like piqued his interest. And so even for like a Bitcoin maxi, you know, with this memoless transaction, it'd be really hard for them to ignore. And could be going back to marketing, could be a fantastic selling point, fantastic product to sell to get out there and pitch. Because we're solving a problem. You don't have to connect your wallet. You're more secure. You're more safe. And then all that volume, all activity is going through THORChain. It can't be directed anywhere else because it's our front end. It's going to us. So yeah, my brain is on fire right now. Like this is cool.
No, I think it'd be great, and there's actually a secondary value to it that is not obvious that people wouldn't grasp immediately, and that is if you are doing memoless transactions. When I do a Bitcoin transaction, like to swap Bitcoin to Ethereum, and if somebody's looking at my wallet, they don't know what just happened, right? They know that I transferred some Bitcoin to some address, but they don't know if I was swapping to Ethereum. We wouldn't even know immediately whether it was swapping to THORChain or not. It would just be a Bitcoin transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, and it would just look like everything else for the most part. Like it wouldn't be immediately clear or obvious what that person was doing because you're not embedding memo information and explaining what they're doing or where that Bitcoin's going to end up, which is might be an ETH address or something like this. And then you pair that with batch outbounds, which is another feature. We're not going to get into the details, but that would also make outbound transactions not have a memo as well. If the outbound transactions would become memoless. So you have inbound memos that are no longer inbound transactions that no longer have memos, and you have outbound transactions that no longer have memos. So if you're doing like an on-chain analysis of somebody's wallet, it becomes a lot less clear that a trade even occurred. It gives you a little bit of some level of privacy. I wouldn't say it's like private, all right. Like I'm not going to make that claim, but it's a layer of obfuscation that would naturally occur from that as well. But it's not rocket science. Somebody could put A and B together, if they wanted to, but it just becomes a little bit more difficult to do so.
Would this work with DEX aggregation or not?
So on DEX aggregation, you would need the outbound memo to inform the DEX aggregation. So in that case, you would need the outbound memo in order to inform the DEX aggregation what to happen.
Okay, so so if you had Bitcoin, you wanted to go to Zcash, which is on Maya protocol, you couldn't. Could you do it? I'm sorry, my brain's kind of broken trying to think of this. Like, would you be able to have that perk where it's not 100% private, but it's an element of privacy that someone had to put A and B together, or would that not work?
Immediately, it would not work, but you could make it work in the sense of like if Maya protocol were to implement memless transactions as well, like say they import the feature from us directly, right? Totally possible. Maybe they'll do it. Then the THORChain protocol, theoretically, if we really wanted to, we could send the Maya tokens with the instructions to swap to Zcash or whatever. Register that memo from one of our Asgards to the Maya's protocol, and then send an outbound transaction without a memo to kind of have that layer of like obfuscation. It's theoretically possible. Would that happen or not? I don't know. Possibly. We can debate it later or whatever.
Sounds like
Well,
a good idea to me.
let's forget the privacy part of it. But would you just be able? I'm trying to think what trades on Dash trades on Maya. So if I have Bitcoin on, I go to this THORChain front end, do memoless swap Bitcoin. Can I buy Dash? Like, will the DEX aggregation and THORChain take care of that, or is it only the pools on THORChain that I'd be able to trade through memoless?
Oh, well, if I build this memoless site that I have in mind, then yeah, theoretically you'll be able to swap to Dash, directly
Cool.
with all that
Cool.
workflow.
Awesome.
In the end, like all it's really doing is just publishing a memo to the THORChain blockchain and then creating an association between your transaction and that memo. So you can do whatever you want. There's no limits to that, right? So maybe like in V1, I wouldn't do it just to keep things simple. On V1, they have a narrowly scoped kind of MVP product, and maybe even just support Bitcoin ETH only on day one, just to kind of like let the code kind of prove its legitimacy and its non-bugginess before you start opening up the floodgates to more things. But theoretically, you can do anything you want, including interacting with the app layer.
Because I know the vast majority of volume in crypto is Bitcoin Tether, ETH to Tether, Bitcoin to ETH or whatever. But in my opinion, in my mind, that's just going to, for now anyways, going to continue on centralized exchanges. The low hanging fruit for us for THORChain is capturing all the trades that don't occur on centralized exchanges, and that's basically through all the shit coins. For lack of that word, like you don't like using that term. Sorry, I shouldn't use it. For all the trades through all of crypto, basically, right? And so if the memoless transaction website can connect Bitcoin with several thousand different cryptos through DEX aggregation, that's huge, because we're going to get those marginal users that they're trying to go from crypto A to B, and then they have to go through like 4 different websites to do it. But if we can do it on just on our front end, we're gonna get users for sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of the attractive things to me is that like if somebody says to me, "Oh, hey, I want to make a trade on THORChain. How do I do that?" I might tell them, like first thing I'll ask them like, "Do you have Trust Wallet? Do you have Ledger? Do you have this? Do you have that? Like, what wallet do you have?" And then once I have that information, I'm like, "Okay, THORSwap's really good, for your wallet that you're using. THORSwap's a really good option for you." Blah blah blah. And it gets a kind of like a very detailed and complicated kind of conversation to get people like to onboarded to start trading or swapping on THORChain. But if you have a wallet like this one, or not a wallet, but a interface like this one, somebody says, "Hey, how do I trade on THORChain?" You just say, "Oh, go to supercheapswapping.com," whatever the hell the name of the domain's going to be, and that's it. You're done. And they just go, and it's a very simple UI. It's very easy, very quick, and very little like mental load to understand. Oh, how do I connect my wallet, and how do I do this, and what page? Okay, what does this fee? Okay, what does this mean? By keeping it very simple and straightforward, like a Dullard's kind of UI that is not featureful. It does not give you advanced capabilities, but it just gets the job done. Has good value to it. I think in our ecosystem.
Well, I think this might be a good middle ground, Kenton, because Chad can make this site, and then that we can help push that, right? I think that's a really cool middle ground, and it brings a unique value proposition, I think, to swapping itself.
Absolutely.
It
Oh.
becomes easy to get people on the site, trading.
We're figuring out all kinds of shit today, guys. I love it. I love when you do the spaces. We all get up here. This is the way to do it. I love it. Everyone gets their brains together. And we start cooking on stage and live. What do we talk about today? The Rogerians, we're really softening on our security posture. So you guys better get excited. Because I think scaling is not going to be a problem. I know a lot of guys are worried about that, but I think I'm really warming up to that too. You know what I mean? Because I've been putting a lot of thought of it, and the way I just see that the node posture and just overall the sentiment of the community and just the type of people involved, it's becoming less and less of a concern. And I'm really digging this memoless idea, Kenton and Chad. I think it's great. I think it's
Yep.
great.
I was actually talking recently to an old dev that was around in the past. I'm not going to say which one quite yet, but an old dev that we had around in our past, one of our really good devs we used to have. He actually kind of came out of the woodwork and came forward to me recently, like last week I think it was, or maybe 2 weeks ago. And he was really interested in like learning more about our roadmap, and so I walked him through what the roadmap is. Like I've got like 8 or 9 different features that it's in my current thinking of the roadmap for the base layer. And we got onto the memoless transaction. He's like, "Oh, that's actually really interesting." He was really kind of interested in that particular feature. So there's a possibility that he might come back to the team and get this memoless transactions, across the finish line.
That would be huge.
Yeah.
Can you share with us that roadmap? You said like 9 things. You've gone over 2, the limit swaps and rapid swaps. What are the other 7 things on your list?
So limit swaps, rapid swaps is the first one. Those 2 kind of sit in the same bucket. Bond provider rotate memo, which is actually already delivered, I think in 3.7, maybe 3.8. I can't remember which one. Yeah, 3.8 maybe. Which allows I think the bond provider to change addresses, I think. As well as the node operator too, to be able to change their node operator address. It's just like a kind of nice thing to do for operators and bond providers. The next one is EDDSA, which I think is already merged in 3.8. I think that one's already done. So that with EDDSA support, we can now support things like Sol and Cardano. I know CK Cardano's in the audience, but we can now support adding Cardano into our chains we support, which is another one we're looking at. 2-second block times, another one. Updating the router, the EVM router to support batch outbounds and also memoless. That's something that's on the docket. Batch outbounds, which I think Liquify is actually going to be contracted to work on that. I'd actually already implemented that for Bitcoin 2 years ago. There's like 6 PRs open that have been open forever. They just have to be kind of stewarded across the finish line in a sense. There's Memless, which I've also already done a long time ago. And then the last one is DKLS and libPDP upgrades, so which is all around our cryptography and improving our cryptography to a more modern and provably secured mechanism. There's a few things on the app layer to do, like swap to an execute memo, for example. Oracle feeds for price feeds for more reliable information to the app layer about the price of Bitcoin, whatever. So there's not any tomfoolery trying to manipulate prices for perpetuals. And then the other thing we talked about, but we're not quite sure about, is zero block swaps. So being able to trade, Bitcoin to ETH in zero comps. And that you can do that because you've turned off RFE, replaced by fee, RBF. And then if there is a reorg of some kind, which on Bitcoin these days, I mean, reorgs almost never happen, because the compute is so fucking high that it's really hard to get to a reorg these days. But the wallet would wear the risk of any kind of reorg scenarios instead of the protocol. So as a wallet, like say you're THORSwap, for example, you could offer like two fees, right? You could also 30 bit fee if you want to do like a regular trade, or you can offer like a 60 bit fee if you want like zero conf, to have a faster execution, as a second option for THORSwap to do it if they wanted to do that. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. We've discussed it and debated a little bit. We've discussed and debated a little bit about allowing LPs to become bond providers, just so we can get more money or more capital into our pools and drive up our TVL. We've had conversations about that, but to me, those are the big things that I'm thinking about to complete or deliver this year, and then head towards what we call ossification.
So you think all those things could be delivered by the end of the year?
Yeah, I'm quite confident with that because I'm doing the rapid swap stuff and I'll be done probably in the next couple months. Andrew from Strange Love's working on the 2-second thing, which is largely already done. The V6 router is already done, just has to be deployed and audited. Batch outbound is the code is largely already done, and we're just talking with Liquify to get that across the finish line. Memless again already coded. It just has to get across the finish line. Probably the most difficult one would be DKLS. The reason why is because the Golang implementation is lacking cancellation, blaming on cancellation. So if somebody were to maliciously kill the signing process and cause the signing to fail, we wouldn't know that that's the person who did that malicious act. We wouldn't know who to slash. So we've spoken to the team behind the Golang library to add that capability, and I know it's on their docket and something they're working towards, but we're waiting on them. That's probably the only one that I would have a question about because it's not entirely us working on that particular thing. But everything else, I think we can get that stuff done within 6 months.
Wow, it'd be awesome. I know you said then, hopefully move towards ossification. And I do understand and appreciate that ossification, long term is a good thing. But I'll be surprised. I mean this in a good way because one of the things that keeps me interested in THORChain is that it's constantly being improved and updated and tweaked. And I'll be shocked if this time you get all these things done and it's calm for a few months. I feel like you guys are going to find new things to improve and perfect and implement. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you were right about what you're saying. This is just the mentality that I have in this particular moment. I think JP is pretty aligned with me in this mentality. I think the stuff that's really exciting, I would presume to be mostly done on the app layer after that point, with perpetuals and other kind of fun kind of a layer of DeFi and whatnot. But you never know. I'll keep my open mind. Like in the end, I always want the base layer to be to be as efficient as possible to achieve the goal that it needs to achieve to be competitive in the market. You know, That's like if Chainflip were to roll out some huge new feature that is, kicking our ass for some reason, and maybe we would need to copy them and do that. I don't think that's ever happened in Chainflip's history. It's more of them copying us than us copying them. But if they were to come out with something really good, we want to follow suit, we could, you know?
You mentioned Chainflip, and like I know their competition in the cross chain space, but the more I think about it, like I think our real competition is Binance and Coinbase. And like we're seeing some of these wallets, like they're not just integrating us in Chainflip, they're integrating centralized exchanges too. And so like do you like do you look at it that way too, Chad? Are you like, you know what, we need to do better than Coinbase and Binance, not just do better than Chainflip?
Yeah, I mean, I do look at it similar. It depends on what kind of like context we're talking about. But I've always stated, I think more or less even from the beginning, that the ultimate goal is that um, centralized exchanges are slowly dying thing, and dexes will take over. I think a majority of trading just because it's so convenient and easy and integrated in so many different wallets and whatnot. It's a lot less effort. Um, when you're using a sex, you have to like log in, which is a two-factor authentication, and then to go to your email, and then click the thing, and then you have to log in, and you have to go click on this portfolio page, and then deposit thing. You have to get the address. You have to go to your wallet. You have to transfer. You have to wait 70 confirmation blocks on Ethereum or whatever the confirmation numbers. Then you have something you can trade with. Then you go ahead and do your trade, which also takes about 3 or 4 or 5 clicks or so. Then you have to wait another hour. Then you can deposit. And then you can withdraw. Like it's just so much. It's just a huge pain in the ass to do sex trading, especially if you're just trying to do a trade and get out. And it's so much easier and faster and simpler to do it through a THORChain or some other DEX. So yes, my mentality is that THORChain should become the largest exchange in the world, bar none, including Coinbase or Binance. That should be the kind of north star that we're all moving towards. And then you can look more on the micro side rather than the macro side, and thinking about who competes against us within the decentralized road. And you have Maya, and you've got Chainflip, and I guess Near is a new one now or something like this. There's been rumors of other ones coming downstream, but in the decentralized sense, like I don't think anybody's close to what we're doing in the current moment, at least.
Yeah, I would agree. Patriot, you got something?
Guys, I think this has been an amazing space. Thank you for your time, Chad. I know you're such a busy guy, but it's so nice to hear from you and give us 3 hours of your time, man. It's awesome. I want to just reset the space and just go back over what we covered, guys. I want everyone, please, remember we said about Slam Bammer. He is a node operator. He was a regular community member who stepped up to take the challenge of a node operator. Please, if you have not bonded your rune, or if you are bonding your rune and you would like to bond more, please consider slinging him some of your bond, because he is exactly the type of caliber of node operator that we want in this network. He reminds me a lot of Kenton, both solid guys. So let's get this amazing individual as into the network as often as we can, because like I said, our node operators are absolute winners. Man, I don't think I have much else. I think this has been an amazing space. I think we covered a lot of grounds. I think a lot of information that'll make the Rugerians very happy. And maybe I should stop using that vernacular. I think, honestly, I am a Rugerian now myself. I think we're all the same team, because for those who don't know, on the THORChain side, on the app layer, our boys, Hans, and a lot of those devs, they were working on THORChain code. They weren't working on their code that was, back in Kujira. They spent many, many months working very hard and diligently to slot the app layer very, very nicely into our own protocol. So those are our devs. Chad's our dev. Those boys are our dev. We're all one big community now. So I need to do a better job of changing my vernacular to reflect that. But yeah, Kenton, I don't really have much else. I think we covered it. If anyone else has any more ideas of what topics we didn't address, I think we were pretty comprehensive today.
No, I think you're right. I think we should start wrapping it up, and do appreciate Chad you hanging out this whole time. Chad, is there any final thoughts you have? Anything you want to leave us with?
I mean, my kind of leaving trailing thoughts here is just like it's an overall appreciation to this community of sticking around, getting through the hard times, helping us get us towards the good times. we're all committed, we're all engaged, we're all still believe in the vision. We're still understand the fundamental value this thing provides, despite earlier dramas that we had. And so I appreciate everybody, having the balls to stick around. It said a lot about you. It said a lot about our community. We are like the cockroach that, even if it's a nuclear bomb, we're still going to be around and still doing what we do. And that should be one of the more, bullish things about this protocol is that it doesn't topple over easily. And even very difficult things always finds a way forward to keep on doing what it does.
Here, here. Great way to end it. Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, I'm right. I couldn't have said that better myself. That is exactly right. That's why I'm so bullish. Are you guys bullish out there? I'm so fucking pumped. I am so bullish about what we're doing here, guys. This is so exciting. We totally have got this shit. Okay. We just have to keep executing and keep doing what you're doing. All right. As I told you guys earlier, I've been really reaching out to the XRP community. They are super excited about what we've done. I had this really naive belief that I was going to go from the XR community and maybe jump over to Solana. Like, no. This is so much. This takes so much of my time. I'm going to stay with the XRP community, and I'm just going to keep proselytizing these guys. And I've already done great, I think, getting them to talk about THORChain and changing their vernacular. And now they understand what THORChain is. I just encourage anyone here, please be an ambassador when we get new chains, like to Solana or Cardano or whatever the chains are going to come to the Tron community. I don't care. It really works, guys. And now I have a great relationship with many people. I just want our own community to take onus upon themselves and realize you have agency, just like Chad does, and push this needle forward because we're all doing this together in real time, right? THORChain survived not because of just one single individual. It's not because Kenton. It's not because Chad Boone, myself, Slambammer, or anyone in this. We did it together. And together, we're going to keep pushing the needle forward. So let's fucking go, you guys. Yeah, Kenton, I agree. I think that's a good place to leave it off, buddy. It's awesome.
LFG. All right on. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Later, guys.
Cheers.
Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.